Welcome, everyone. This special council meeting is called to order at 4 o'clock on April 19th, 2022. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelethat on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Notice of video recording. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items today? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the time change from 3:30 to 4 o'clock, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And carried. Adoption of minutes, March 15th, 2022, regular minutes. Any errors or omissions?
One error, page, 5. Down at the bottom, I believe, under 5.1, the approval of the agenda when item 10.1 was deferred. I believe that was meant to be when Mr. McLean was available, or is it?
I think that's when Mr. Lawrence was on vacation.
I know it was. I wasn't sure which way it went.
We don't have anyone here that can
Speak to that.
speak to that. But I think it was when Mr. Lawrence was on vacation. Any other errors or omissions? May I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Any opposed? All in favor? And carried. March 29th, 2022, regular minutes. Any errors or omissions?
Nope.
Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed? All in favor? Carried. Public input. This is an opportunity for members of the public to provide input. Speakers will have 2 minutes to present unless council votes unanimously to extend a speaker's time. Please note this is not a question and answer period, and council is under no obligation to enter into a debate on any issue. That said, we are more than happy to receive your comments. We ask that all speakers state their name, address, and the topic. If you are attending via Zoom, please use the raise your hand icon to speak, and if you are attending by telephone, hit *9. Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak? You may go to the podium.
Is it on? Okay. The minutes of the meeting that we held on March 21st.
Point of order.
Could we just have your name and address, please?
I'm sorry. Patricia Siebert. I live at 1058 Helen Road. The minutes of the meeting that we held on March 21st are in your agenda. I'm assuming that you've read them. You may or not be planning to discuss them, but I wanted to call your attention to the comments that were shared by Margaret Morrison as she summed up our meeting. She cautioned that those making decisions should be aware of unforeseen consequences that may follow if actions are not carefully considered. Anyone who has paid attention to advances in the understanding of ecosystems is well aware that any action in one area will affect the entire ecosystem. The same is true of communities. Ucluelet has experienced this over many decades, things that happen and then we have to deal with them after the fact. We should have gained enough wisdom by now to carefully consider implication of changes and the ripple effects they have. Prior to your discussions, I want to call your attention to some consequences that may have gone unforeseen or not predicted in the Village Green proposal. 2 that I have found no evidence of being discussed are: 1, a domino effect of parking problems in other parts of town. We all know that in times of high tourist traffic, it is often difficult to find parking places such as on the co-op lot the Davidson Plaza, the lot beside Barry's drugstore. I do not think that I've often even seen vacant spaces along Peninsula Road during peak tourist times. The removal of parking for municipal staff by your building, while not mentioned in this proposal, will also increase pressure on the parking spaces in other parts of town. One of your stated goals in your strategic plan was to protect natural areas. If your plan removes the existing spaces, making it necessary for there to be alternate parking for Crow's Nest customers and staff, Jan Dresky is considering the need to create more parking spaces on her place, her lot. The natural area beside her store might have remained unchanged if not for the Village Green proposal. The proposal to add more spaces to the Cedar Street parking lot will also require the removal of other natural vegetation. This loss of natural vegetation is only being made necessary because of this proposal and the fact that it removes existing parking spaces. These spaces will be replaced by landscape vegetation that's not a part of our natural ecosystem. Until there's a comprehensive plan for parking in the district, in the entire district, taking into consideration all of the changes to parking, piecemeal fixes may force more chipping away at natural vegetation of the area. So please understand that our concerns are not limited to a lack of communication. Simply dumbing down communication methods will not lead to a richer dialogue. Thank you for your considerations.
Thank you. Jan, you'd like to speak?
Jan Dresky, 205 Main Street and 239 Main Street house the Crow's Nest. I came with a new map today that some of you have seen. I have more to hand out if you want to. I made it this morning to try and get my head around the comment of I'm only removing 9 parking places and then another time 12. I didn't count any of the parking spaces that would be removed in front of the Crow's Nest because that's still up in the air. So I started at the 8 being removed in front of the district office, and I went around and I came back down to the bottom of Main Street across from my store, and the number is 31. I know when the information was presented to the results of the survey, the comment was made there was a lot of misinformation out there. I'm pretty sure they were referring to my map. I'd be really happy to sit down with anybody and say, tell me where I'm wrong. But 31 plus whatever may happen in front of the Crow's Nest is 31 is the minimum number. So the financial future of the Crow's Nest and many businesses downtown is in the hands of the planning department, who are directing the contractors. I find this an incredible idea. Not only is the Crow's Nest business at stake, but the aquarium and Jamie's and Pioneer Boatworks and all the other small businesses downtown. The consultation process was almost non-existent. I know that people have said there were meetings. One comment was made, only 5 people showed up. Well, my comment to that is if only 5 people showed up, then maybe it wasn't communicated properly to the community so that more people could show up, because clearly it's an issue that people have a lot of concern about. So all these changes are coming out of the planning department, and they often quote the 2007 indications from some meeting. I haven't identified which one in 2007 about the Village Green, which, let's face it, is a 15-year-old document, and there's been many, many changes to Ucluelet in the last 15 years. And did these people say remove parking when they said enhance the Village Green? So these changes are too important to be rushed by a grant deadline. I know this has all been in the works for a long time, but let's take a little more time and get the decision right. And should this be an election issue? Is the council not considered lame duck in the month of May when you're 6 months away from an election? I don't know. I'm just asking that question. Clearly, there's widespread discontent about these. So why are we rushing into this? The 3 options presented by the planner, option 1 is exactly the same as the very original document that was put out in late November, early December. Option 2 is the option that was put forward at the meeting of February 22nd, when it was decided by the council that, let me see if I can quote this correctly for you. to reduce the loss of parking in front of the Crow's Nest or to defer the implementation of pedestrian improvements in the project. And the report that follows, the very first comment says, deferring pedestrian improvement in front of the Crow's Nest building is not an option that the design team can support. Okay, well, that was the second half of the request, so that's off the table. And then it goes on to say that the option 3, which is the only one that leaves 2 parking spaces in front of the Crow's Nest, and maybe, although it's not clear, leaves me access via my driveway. It's the only one that's even different from the first 2 that we've already seen. They say they can't support it. So I point out that this is not in keeping with the intention of the motion that was made on February 22nd. Basically, they've come back and said, well, no, we're not going to do that part, and we don't support this part, and the other 2 are exactly what we've already presented. So, again, why is the planning department making the financial decisions of many businesses in downtown Ucluelet, and who knows on Pinsel, but that's another story. So that was the points I would like to make, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jan. I believe there were engineers involved in some of that decision-making process.
Which were directed by the planning department. I mean, the engineers have to be given some kind of information to proceed. So,
Thank you for your comments. Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Does anyone have their hands raised on Zoom?
Yes, there's Kerry Harwood. I'll just allow him to speak now.
Thank you.
Mr. Harwood, are you there?
Good afternoon, I am. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can hear you.
All right. Hello, everyone from snowy Edmonton, Alberta. It's Kerry Harwood at 1136 Coral Way. And just wanted to shine some light with what I'm up to. I'm actually dancing and driving across Canada right now with my girlfriend, bringing communities, people, and nature together in one, and we're having a time. And so I'm looking forward to dancing with you all when we come back in a few months, because we're potentially even going to drive and travel around the world. So spread a bit of positivity, but also I just wanted to raise some concern and awareness for the housing situation. I'm not sure, I haven't attended a council meeting in a little while, but yet again, I have more and more friends looking for rooms, and I see more and more businesses looking for employees. And I just wanted to shout out to Randy Olawa in his heroic efforts in his Pacific Rim Home Development Cooperative, which I believe we are speaking about today. And so I just wanted to hold space that we act swiftly. And I've also heard rumor, if it was on paper, that there is $1 million available for community housing. And if it comes down to it, I'm prepared to sell my home to dedicate even more funds, because I believe that less is more and community is better together. And I love Ucluelet with all my heart, and it is a dear place that I treasure. And I never thought I would be so excited to come home to such a beautiful place, even after being away for a couple of weeks. And so, yeah, there's many opportunities here to work with nature, to work with the community. We could even work on selective logging practices, and I'm very excited to move into a tiny home in the very near future, working with your team and with cooperation at the utmost for the good of every Ucluetan, regardless of how much income or status they may hold. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Kerry. Does anyone else have their hand raised? No? Have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Hi, can you hear me on there?
Yes, we can.
Through the mayor, we do have one email through community input. It is regarding one of the upcoming topics on the agenda. If it's all right, I'll go ahead and read it.
Yes, thank you.
It's entitled Traffic Calming Options for Bay Street, file number 8600-10. I'm writing in response to the traffic calming options for Bay Street in the vicinity of Edna Bachelor Park. I am in favor of traffic calming measures put into place to make this area safer. I have 2 children under the age of 5, and we use this area daily. It can be a very dangerous area to walk due to speeding traffic, no sidewalks, uneven sides of the road to walk along, and a blind spot on the south side of the hill. Please add the construction of a sidewalk along Bay Street in this plan for pedestrian safety. Please consider joining the sidewalk on Matterson Bay Street to Edna Park. I also support the use of speed humps to slow traffic down. An idea would be to make the 30-kilometer zone start from the corner of Matterson and Bay Street, continuing past Edna Park to the appropriate distance. Thank you for making our community safer. Josh Anker, 1561 Bay Street in Ucluelet. As of now, that is the only email in community input.
Great, thanks, Paula.
My pleasure.
So one more round. Any member of the audience wish to speak? And does anyone have their hand raised on Zoom? And that was the only email. All right. Thank you. So we're at delegations now. We have 2 delegations this afternoon. The first one is Tarni Jacobson, Pacific Rim Hospice Society, regarding the Better at Home program. Hi, Tarni.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for hosting us today. I'm here with my co-presenter, so Paniota. Yes, she's on. I'm Paniota. You might want to unmute yourself too. But we're here today to talk to you about the Better at Home program. So again, Tarni Jacobson from Pacific Rim Hospice Society.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pam Thimeras. I work for Pacific Rim Hospice as the Better at Home coordinator.
And if it's okay with everyone, I'm just going to share my screen. Let's hope it all works. It has a little pop-up, Paula. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I think they're working on it. Just give us a second. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. First timer. Great.
Can you try again, Tarni?
I think it's got it. Hopefully. Share it.
Hit it harder.
Right.
See, it worked.
Thanks. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So Pacific Rim Better at Home program helps older adults and elders with non-medical day-to-day tasks such as grocery shopping and light housekeeping, for example, so that they can continue to live independently in their homes. Friendly visits from volunteers also keep participants socially engaged and connected. Healthy Aging from the United Way administers the Better at Home program throughout British Columbia. They support over 80 nonprofit organizations who deliver the Better at Home program in over 260 communities. So this is a community-based approach, and it ensures that local agencies are responding to local needs. So Better at Home is funded by the Government of BC through the Ministry of Health, and it's managed by United Way of British Columbia.
The healthy aging values and vision. So the keys to healthy aging for older adults would be 1, increasing physical activity, 2, reducing loneliness, and 3, maintaining and enhancing independence. So active, connected, and engaged. These are the keys to health and wellness for all of us, but they become particularly important as we age. So based on these simple essentials, Healthy Aging develops and supports a range of programs and activities that support older adults, including the Better at Home program.
So the funding from United Way BC to Pacific Rim Hospice Society, we've just finished our year one, ended March 31st, and now just started April 1st to March 31st, 2023. We'll have just over 88,000 to deliver this program this year. United Way says that funding's not guaranteed, although we're pretty confident that funding will continue year to year.
So some of the possible services that we're looking to provide would be light housekeeping, friendly visiting, transportation to appointments, grocery shopping, light yard work, wood chopping or stacking, snow removal if needed, minor home repairs, and other services such as walking groups and socials. So Better at Home services will vary from community to community, depending on resources available, community capacity, and the specific needs of local seniors or elders. What services from Better at Home basket of services are a priority for seniors and elders in your own community?
So the cost of the program, essentially the Better Home participants pay for Better Home services, well, some of them. The friendly visiting program with volunteers is no fee for service. But some of the other ones, like for example, light housekeeping, the charge will depend on how much income you make per year. So it's based on a sliding scale. If you make over $43,300, then you pay 100%. You don't get a subsidy. Alternatively, if you're at or below $18,415, you will get 100% subsidy. So there's lots of in-betweens as well.
Advisory Committee. Members on this committee are tasked with guiding the program. So the Advisory Committee has 10 seats available, one for each West Coast community, with at least half of the participants being older adults and elders. Current representation includes Tofino and Ucluelet. We also have representation from First Nations Health Authority and NTC as well. So our first meeting was held on April 7th, 2022 via Zoom, and all committee members receive a $50 gift card honorarium from one of the co-ops in their community for each meeting that they attend.
And so far, we've hired the program coordinator, which is Pan. We've created the draft terms of reference for the advisory committee. We have been seeking advisory committee members in all 10 communities, and we're still working on that. We are in the process of seeking contractors such as house cleaners and maintenance companies in all West Coast communities. Our first volunteer training occurred in March, and we have 7 graduates who will likely proceed to becoming volunteers for the family visiting program. And we're ongoing marketing and seeking clients participate. Participants are also ongoing. So that concludes our presentation. If anybody has any questions, we are interested in seeking input. If you have some suggestions around what baskets of services that you may have heard that your community members may be interested in. And of course, if you can't think of it today or in the future would like to contact us, you're always welcome to reach out. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you for your presentation. Does Council have any questions? Councillor Cole?
I'll just make a comment. I'd like to thank both Tarni and Paniota for your presentation, and you both know that my day job and what you are doing are very well aligned with keeping people happier, longer, healthier in their homes. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Councillor Hoare?
I don't have any questions. I think it's a brilliant program. I certainly hear people, needing a ride to appointments and help with things. And I'm going to actually see about hooking my parents in Vancouver up with some of the light housekeeping because they're starting to have trouble there. So thank you for bringing it to the fore.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. How do you define senior?
Question. I didn't put that in the presentation. United Way says it's 65 or over, but we've always kind of considered 55 and over, the older adult category. So I think there's lots of flexibility in there, but we're going with 55 plus, 55 and better.
That's good to know. Thank you. And it says you were accepted halfway through the first year. Was that just a timing issue with the application?
Yeah, you know, it was interesting because we have a West Coast Senior Services Network headed by Ursula Bank and Margaret Morrison, a few other community partners, Tokwat First Nation. So we had been working towards getting United Way to onboard us with the Better at Home for probably a year and a half, 2 years. And it just so happened that perhaps timing with them or what have you, that they just said, yes, we're going to fund you. We ended up getting our funding towards the end of November. So it was even more than halfway through the first year. So we've been trying to rush and catch up in the meantime, but we're really close to basically onboarding the clients. We do have a handful of people who are interested, but very close to actual launching. So
that's really, really exciting. Thank you for bringing this to the West Coast. Any other questions from council? No? Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Well, thank you for having us today. And also Pacific Rim Hospice Society just wants to say thank you to all of you for funding our youth grief and bereavement program with Tara Satcher, our counselor. We really appreciate your support. And thanks for supporting the Better Home as well. Much appreciated.
That was through our grant and aid program, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, our second delegation today is from Randy Olawa, Pacific Rim Home Development Cooperative, regarding non-market housing project. Welcome, Mr. Olawa.
Still on? Nice. All right. Well, it's been a little while since I've been here. I'm not sure. 1150 Randy Olawa, 1150 Rupert Road. I come here today with joy in my heart, giving the Ucluelet Council and the community of Ucluelet a quick update from our last presentation. We were here, I believe it was April 12th, 2021. It was by Zoom. We did a great presentation, we thought, and it led to some further conversations with the district that gave us a little more work to do. Just so you know, I just wanted to deviate off topic here for a second. Every time you said motion second carried, I had to sit on my hand. And I'm trying not to get a point of order from Marilyn up here. With that being said, we've included everything, our business plan and our version 8 document in the agenda. Lots of information in there. Hopefully you got a really good grasp now of what we're trying to accomplish here. I know when we came in last year, we were full of enthusiasm and excitement. We understood the whole project in our heads, but it was a bit of a learning curve for us as well to try and articulate a concept that wasn't fully formed for us over to council when, council's worried about things like, sidewalks and all the great things that municipal government is tasked with. And unfortunately, housing really isn't one of them, but, welcome to 2022, it is now. As well as a lot of other things. So your scope of work is definitely broadened. I wanted to start with a quick update on where we're at. I was hoping today to have an announcement that we received our very first Federation of Canadian Municipalities Planning Grant. In April of last year as well, we put in for a $31,000 grant. That was a planning grant that would have allowed us to pay because as of today, it's been completely out of our pockets, would have allowed us to pay our accountants and our grant writers and our housing development consultants and that type of stuff. But unfortunately, we don't have a grant announcement. Maybe they're sitting on this one as well, Mr. Lawrence. So I'll just read briefly what we put into our council delegation, and it kind of summarizes where we sort of see the district and all the great work you guys have done towards housing and all the new policies and that. So with the regional housing strategy completed, it's amazing. We are mentioned in that strategy. The new OCP, Tourism Ucluelet submission, and their tactical marketing plan. The affordable housing money's in place, $1 million, the mayor announced. We feel that the time is right to re-engage Ucluelet Council and give a general update on our not-for-profit and non-market housing project. We understand this is a delegation, so we're not expecting an answer today, but we'll be checking the mailbox every day for a letter from you. But feel free to comment tonight. The community is eagerly waiting, as well as our board members. So we do request for clarity. Does the mayor and council have support for this type of development in Ucluelet? Is the PRHDC concept something mayor and council feel they can support? We respectfully request a meeting with staff to introduce them to the plan and to help source available lands from future developers, existing District of Ucluelet lands, provincial and federal lands as well. So that's basically why we're here today. I do want to do a quick couple of bits of housekeeping if I could, because we're just over 2 years of our time and commitment into this. We are losing 2 of our board members. So I would like to publicly thank Karen Smith and Dave Schofield, who will be leaving PACRIM. I've been hanging on to them as long as I can. So we'll be actively looking for new members for the board. But again, that depends 100% on the response we get from this council. So if the response obviously is favorable and it's something that we can work with as a not-for-profit organization, we'll definitely regroup, repurpose, restock, re-grab whoever from the community we can, and we will be there to work with the district to see this thing completed. So first of all, again, I would just like to thank from the bottom of my heart Karen Smith and Dave Schofield for their time working with me on this project. And then a bit of good news. I think every one of the councillors here, at some point, maybe not Jen, was cornered by a fella by the name of Louis Rouleau over the last decade or so with the inception of this plan. Well, I'm proud to say that the PACRIM Home Development Cooperative has sold its very first equity membership to Mr. Rouleau. So with that being said, we now have our very first equity member. Welcome aboard, Louis. He's not a board member. He's been very adamant about that yet. But I just wanted to welcome Louis and again say thank you to the 2 exiting board members. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olo. Would you like to field some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does council have any questions for Mr. Olowa? While they're thinking, I'll maybe pose one of my own. You're specifically looking for units that will only sleep 1, perhaps 2 people. So if a family has moved to town to work here, there is no unit that a family can take. Is that correct? Not exactly. So we've gone through several iterations of the concept. We started originally with that 40-unit, single-unit concept because we thought we'd be really quick. We thought this was just going to be, we could have been built by now. So, of course, try and tackle the most urgent need, and the quickest need would be the single workers in the community that can't find housing. And a lot of our businesses that did our housing survey said that was the brunt of, that was the most need. Since then, we've had several discussions, and we've drawn up other plans where we've moved the modular construction units around, still utilizing the same design, but putting them in a row house configuration, sort of a horseshoe, where you could have 2 single units, and if in the event that a business hired a couple with a couple of small children, additional rooms can be opened up, and that one bedroom full kitchen unit then opens up to a 2nd bedroom. So we've discussed a lot of different designs. Great, thank you. That's good information to have.
Excuse me, Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Mayor Noel has his hand raised.
Sorry, Mayor Noel.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor McEwen, for chairing this very important meeting today. Mr. Alowa, it's great to hear your voice, and yes, a year's gone by, and And I really want to echo what you've done here with articulating in detail your business plan. It's very thorough, from much more thorough than we've seen last year. Obviously, what's transpired between now and then on the housing front. No, we haven't created any new spots, and no doors have opened up. I know that when I've spoken to you in the past, we did have an application in trying to get an $800,000 sewer line down Seaplane Base Road, hoping that would have freed that particular piece of property up in order to, look at initiatives like you're presenting here. To answer your question regarding is the council interested in supporting the concept? Of course we're looking for individuals, organizations like yourself in order to assist us in providing housing needs. I think what you're working on here is identifying a specific group, a worker in the town through their employer that is not addressed anywhere on the West Coast. So I think there's no disputing the importance of what you're trying to do here. You've mentioned a couple times, Reed, the fact that the municipality does have $1 million, and as you understand, we are reviewing and Tourism Ucluelet is undertaking a reassessment of the hotel tax from 2 to 3, and I understand that a large portion of that is, if there is going to be an increase, how are we going to ensure that increase is going to be earmarked for affordable housing. So lots of good work's been going on the last few years. We know that getting secure funding in order to support initiatives for housing are critical. In your report, I think it really illustrates one of the challenges that we do have is when you look at district property, we're kind of limited when you start looking at your 3 areas that you did present here, which were Seaplane Base, Coast Guard, or Big Beach. I think for me is, and you did identify in your report as well, is staff bringing a report back to council, looking at what are viable lands that may not be currently in the district's ownership. That would be the first step in ensuring that we can start to make some sound decisions on housing. I must say that I do get really nervous about looking at a chunk of land that is completely treed, because I'm just really nervous about excavation costs and overruns from before we even get the foundation in there. So to answer your question, we're supportive, and I think I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Lawrence there and to the rest of council about how do we get that report back from staff in order to give us some options and in ensuring that organizations like yourself play a key role in this going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Noel. It is kind of interesting, the 3 options that you've looked at. Both Seaplane Base and Coast Guard Road have no sewer or water. That's going to be an issue. And Big Beach is going to be pretty severely impacted by Lot 16 when that gets rolling. And their first objective is to build that apartment building that is for affordable housing. So that's good news. But yeah, Mr. Lawrence, do you have anything to add to Mr. Olawa's report?
Thank you. If it's council's wish, we can do a resolution to direct this back to staff so that we can take a look at Mr. Olawa's report and then bring options back to council for consideration.
Thank you. And one other question, Mr. Olawa, have you canvassed your potential investors, like the employers that are actually going to buy into these units? Have you done any sort of canvassing or gotten any commitments from any of the employers in town?
We do. We have letters of support. First of all, thank you to His Worship for his words of encouragement. But yes, we do have letters of support from businesses. We were always under the till we had council on side, things need to happen in a process. So until we had the blessing of council and we had a chance to sit with staff and go over different options and come back with a report and move on that direction, we weren't really comfortable taking money from people until we have something tangible. I won't go into the strata world, but until you actually have, the fellow with the affordable housing lot across from the school. He can't take money until he's gotten to a certain stage in that development. So, we were cognizant of that and we wanted to be aware of that. So we weren't wanting to take any funds from anybody, but we do have community support. And that was also in our survey that we had 44 respondents to. But I do want to mention too that because we haven't had a chance to sit with planning yet and speak their language, or have our housing consultants sit with planning yet, we have evolved to the point where we are now working with a company called Green Violin, who has, sorry for the shaky voice, I'm really emotional about this project, but there is an opportunity here to use existing residential lots. So I know council's big on laneway houses and that type of stuff. There's no reason other than effort that the Pac Rim Home Development Cooperative couldn't, by way of lease agreement, working through BC Housing and through planning, through a development process, leasing a portion of somebody's backyard that was identified by staff to have ease access to current services, where the Pac Rim comes in, leases that portion of somebody's backyard, drops one of our units in, we handle everything on the one side, we put up a little fence, we put the unit in, the homeowner's happy because they're getting a nice lease agreement. If 3, 5, 6 years from now the homeowner decides not to want that there anymore, there's an exit clause, we come and take the home back out. So there's a lot of discussions that haven't had to happen yet that need to happen.
Interesting, thank you. Mayor Noel?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to confirm, Mr. Alowa, initially when this conversation has been bouncing around, you were thinking of putting something like this at the Gabrant property. Is that still on the table for you, or is that something you can talk about?
Oh, absolutely. But I thought we were clear with that. In our early design stages, again, out of pocket. Sorry, Kathy. As you know, it's now. We would have lost 2.5 acres of that valuable property to a septic system. It just wasn't prudent. Additionally, we articulated last spring that we had full intent of doing that until the engineering stuff came up. And then we went to one of the funding sources, which is BC Housing. Their first question was on the box, have you checked the box where you went and talked to your local government? So since that time, we've been trying to talk to our local government.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Thank you for the question. That was on the back of my mind too. Any other questions from council? Councillor Hoare?
So you did have a preliminary conversation with BC Housing?
Many.
Okay. Just there's...
They're still waiting in the wing.
Right.
Everybody's there.
Okay.
There's a lot of money out there. And that was the whole point. I mean, if we could have had this discussion last summer, I don't know the timing on the sewer line to the rec hall, but if an co-application went in, Pac Rim, District of Ucluelet, we need an additional $1 million. And to say our project was $5 million in 2021, it's now 10. We could have done a co-application potentially for any type of sewer infrastructure, and it would add weight to those applications as well. Gord Johns, we've got letters from Gord Johns, Josie Osborne. We'll actually be contacting Gord tomorrow because he will help us with our FCM grant.
That's something for us to keep in the back of our minds for sure. Thank you.
And so if I could add, we touched a little bit on future development. There's an opportunity here for Ucluelet to start a land bank. So a land bank is a small organization within a community that is bestowed land and properties either through agreements by the District of Ucluelet, in this case, where a future development would have to give that piece of land to that community partner who would hold it in trust for specific use like affordable housing. So we could actually have people that are exiting Ucluelet, leave their family home. The possibilities are endless. We just have to get to the table and have the discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence, can you help us with a resolution
Absolutely.
to have staff come back to us with some possibilities?
Yes, so the resolution would be that council directs staff to bring a report back to council on the, pardon me, Pacific Rim Home Development Corporation or Cooperative Initiative.
Could someone make that motion?
I will make that motion.
And a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Any opposed? All in favor? And carried. Thank you, Mr. Olowa. That was really insightful.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great meeting.
Is there any unfinished business? Hearing none, may I have a motion to enter into a committee of the whole?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Any opposed? And carried. And it's 4:47. So we are going to discuss item 9.1 on the agenda, traffic calming next steps.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In the fall of 2021, Council asked staff to provide a solution for speedy drivers in Ucluelet. This is that solution, or this is the beginning of that solution. Staff are proposing that a speed mitigation policy be created, and once it's adopted by Council, it could be referred to as a guideline and a tool to solve and mitigate speed throughout the community. Staff have engaged an expert in the field, a subject matter expert. His name is Mr. Richard Rudel. He's a professional engineer, and he's worked with over 30 communities solving these issues. He's also the author of the Canadian Guide to Neighborhood Traffic Calming. So Mr. Drudel is going to do a brief presentation and overview of that potential policy and go through some goals and objectives. Once that presentation is concluded, we have 4 questions for Council to consider and discuss. And those answers will inform and direct the creation of that policy. So with that said, I'll leave it to the expert, Mr. Drudel.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Good afternoon, Mr. Drudel.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be with you this afternoon. I'm going to share my screen now and start up my presentation. So just give me one moment to get this going and pick which screen I want to share. That's the one. Let's see if that's going to work. Can you now see my screen with, it says traffic calming policy, 19th of April?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so thank you very much. This afternoon, I want to talk about a new traffic calming policy to be developed for the district. I'm going to review the policy, and also we're going to touch on some of the traffic safety issues that have been identified on Bay Street as a way of demonstrating how that policy would be applied. So first, before I get into the presentation, it'd be useful just to recap what traffic calming is, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Traffic calming is essentially using physical measures or devices to encourage motorists to drive safely and respectfully of others, and that means respectfully of pedestrians and cyclists and neighborhood residents. So that's what we're trying to achieve with traffic calming. Why do we need to specifically have a policy? You've already been doing some traffic calming to date. In Ucluelet, you have some speed humps and a raised crosswalk. That's been successful. The thing is, with the success of those speed humps, you're likely to get more and more requests now for speed humps elsewhere as people identify and consider that they have problems. You already have now a petition from the residents of Bay Street that requesting speed humps there. The risk is that without procedures or guidance for responding to those requests, there are safety risks if it's not, the response isn't done appropriately. There's even potentially financial risks if you end up putting things in that aren't effective or that you have to replace with other things later on. So there's some reasons why you want to have a policy. One of the key reasons is that following the procedures and the guidance in the policy will help to ensure that you have community support for traffic calming. It also helps you to avoid creating any unintended consequences or creating problems elsewhere as a result of putting in some traffic calming. Helps you determine priorities for traffic calming where you may have multiple locations and not the resources to deal with all of them at once. And it helps you maximize the return on your investment as a result of traffic calming. So in other words, you can be confident that following the procedures and the policy, that the money you spend on traffic calming is money well spent. So what will the policy do? Well, it'll do all these things. Essentially, it will help you to identify and implement appropriate traffic calming solutions, make the best use of the funds that you have, and most importantly for how this rolls out is that it allows you to treat every issue, every request for traffic calming equitably and consistently in a way that everyone can clearly understand and is transparent to all persons that are involved. So the first part of the policy just is fairly simple. It establishes goals and objectives for traffic calming. There's really two key goals. One is safety, which is to make the roads safer for everyone. And that means not just motorists, but pedestrians, cyclists, residents, visitors, everyone who's using or living next to that road. And the second one is to improve livability, or to put it another way, it's to get rid of some things or reduce some things that may be negatively impacting the livability of a community, of a neighborhood. And these objectives help support those two goals for traffic calming. So the next part of the policy will actually give you some guidance regarding specific traffic calming measures. There's several types of traffic calming measures that are commonly used in communities everywhere. There's more than this, but these are the ones that tend to be the most commonly used. The first two you already have experience with in Ucluelet, speed humps, and you've got a raised crosswalk as well now. But there's some other ones that you do want to consider and that may be a better solution in some cases than a speed hump or even a raised crosswalk. And these will all be covered, guidance will be provided regarding these devices in the policy. So the first, just to recap, is speed humps. These are, you have some on Peninsula Road and on Manderson Drive. Speed humps' primary benefit is they discourage motorists from speeding. As the name would imply, they've been shown to reduce 85th percentile traffic speeds by 6 to 13 kilometers an hour. And as an aside, when I say 85th percentile traffic speed, that's the standard measure that traffic engineers use of traffic speed. So it means the speed at which 85% of people are going slower, 15% of people are going faster than that. But that's what we measure, and we can see how that speed changes with the introduction of speed humps. Speed humps can also discourage people from shortcutting through neighborhoods as well. In some cases, not always, but in some cases, a shortcut route that might have been attractive, once you put a few speed humps in there, it's no longer so attractive anymore. Speed humps are generally used in multiples. You don't just use one hump, you use multiple humps. In this example, you can see there's a second speed hump up on the hill where the cyclists are, one down at the bottom of the hill. They're well suited to 30 kilometer an hour zones like you would have at a playground or nearby a school, and you can space the humps closer together as need be to get the speeds down to where you'd like to get them. Speed humps are great for cyclists. You can ride over a speed hump, no problem. You can park your car on top of a speed hump, so they don't really have any impact on parking or on bicycle use. Speed humps can be used on grades up to and including 8%. The reason I mention this is that you do have a request for speed humps on Bay Street right now that we'll be having a look at later in this presentation. But some parts of Bay Street are actually more than 8%. So you wouldn't be able to use a speed hump on those parts of Bay Street. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we consider whether speed humps are an appropriate solution on Bay Street. And finally, speed humps can be used on roads that don't have curbs and gutters, so like in this example, and as is the case on many roads in the district. So they're usable in all circumstances. When you combine a speed hump with a crosswalk, you get a raised crosswalk like in this example. Now this red treatment is optional. You don't have to put that in there. This is an extra that was added in this case, but basically the crosswalk is on top of the speed hump. You have one on Matterson Drive at Bay Street. Basically it has the same effect as a speed hump. It discourages speeding. It'll reduce traffic speeds by about 5 to 13 kilometers an hour, but it also improves pedestrian safety. So it increases the proportion of motorists that yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. We've all probably been in that situation where you're waiting in a crosswalk, or you start crossing the road in a crosswalk and some motorist just blows right through you, doesn't stop at all. Well, a raised crosswalk helps to minimize the occurrence of that situation. Another thing that's often used at crosswalks, and something that's part of your streetscape plans for Peninsula Road, is curb extensions. So this is where the road is narrowed from the outside in, so that the road is now narrower, as narrow as 6 meters. What that does is primarily a pedestrian safety benefit, so it's typically used in combination with a crosswalk, like in this example at a school. It helps to improve pedestrian safety, makes pedestrians more visible to motorists because they're standing up further, closer to the road, helps pedestrians see motorists approaching better as they enter the crosswalk. There's not much of an effect on speed. There's no hump here, so there's not usually much of a speed reduction, if at most, up to 3 kilometers an hour. So this is primarily a pedestrian safety measure, but in some cases that is the more appropriate solution. Another solution that's common and that's used at an intersection, speed humps are typically used between intersections, but if the problem is at the intersection, something like a traffic circle could be a really good solution. It does improve the safety of an intersection significantly, and it also has a speed reduction benefit or discourages speeding. And again, it can reduce speeds by up to 14 kilometers an hour. So you get some speed reduction benefit and some safety benefits in the intersection as well. This example is from Nanaimo, where the road didn't have sidewalks or curbs even. So what we did was we built curbs on all 4 corners. So again, as in some of the roads in the district, and you clearly don't have curbs or gutters or sidewalks, you can still use a traffic circle at an intersection, even in those conditions. Lastly, I just want to touch on another measure. These are speed display signs. This is more of a passive measure. It's not something you build in the road, something you put on the side of the road. There's a radar detector basically inside the sign that activates the sign when the motorist is driving above a specified speed. In this case, we set it at 56 kilometers an hour, and it starts flashing at the motorist the appropriate speed limit of 50 and advising them to slow down. This is a good solution in cases where you're not able to use speed humps or on another type of traffic calming device, and they've been shown to reduce traffic speeds by about 10 kilometers an hour. So that's an overview of some of the more commonly used types of traffic calming. The reason I wanted to do that is just to demonstrate that there are more solutions out there than speed humps, and all of these will be described in the traffic calming policy. So the next part of the policy then is, after we've talked about the goals and objectives and the kinds of traffic calming we use, is the process that we would use to actually go through developing and implementing traffic calming measures. So there's 4 steps that are involved here. The first one is initiation. And what this is anyone can initiate a request for traffic calming. They can identify an issue and say, I'd like some traffic calming, please. That can be a resident, that could be a business operator, municipal staff can even do that, members of council, police, emergency services, a representative of another agency can do that. Anyone can initiate a request for traffic calming. One of the key things that I'm suggesting be included at this stage is that request for traffic calming includes some indication of community support. So the district and staff can be confident that it's not just one person who thinks there's a problem. There's actually more people out there that consider that there's a problem and would like something done about it. So that might be requiring a certain number of signatures of affected property owners, residents, tenants, or businesses, just to show that there is wider community support for this issue and this request for traffic calming. That way you can be confident that when you do identify a traffic calming solution and go to implement it, it will be welcomed by the community. So assuming now that we have a request for traffic calming, The next step is what I call screening, which is basically to look at the request and say, is this something that requires a traffic calming solution? It may be that there are other ways of responding to this. It could be an issue that is best dealt with by as a maintenance issue. Maybe there's a pothole that's a safety issue, but it's simply a pothole. We can send a maintenance crew and deal with it right away. There's a sign that's been knocked down or something like that that's a maintenance problem or an operational issue, as opposed to requiring a traffic calming solution. It may also be a case sometimes, not often, but sometimes it's a case where there really isn't an issue at all. Somebody thinks there's a speeding problem, but they're the only one, and there's not really any evidence to support that, and there's no other solution that can be done. That doesn't happen too often, but this is where we would figure out if a response is needed, if it's traffic calming, or if it's something else. Assuming it's traffic calming, then step 3 is to actually develop a traffic calming solution. So this is where and you might even come up with more than one traffic calming solution, but this is where you would then collect some data if it's appropriate, you determine what the conditions are and what's appropriate in those conditions. This is where you also focus on identifying the real problem as opposed to what the reported problem is. And this is something I emphasize a lot, because people will tell you there's a problem. They're not traffic experts, so they'll just say sometimes it's a speeding problem. And it may be a speeding problem, but I've been encountered many cases where it's something other than speeding. For example, it might be a road where it's just not safe or it's not comfortable for people to cross that road due to the amount of traffic or the speed of traffic. And the solution isn't a speeding solution, like something like speed humps. It's actually a pedestrian safety solution, something like improved crosswalk to help people get across the road better. So it's always important to understand what the real measure is. It's always important when you're looking at traffic calming solutions to come up with solutions that are going to work on their own, that aren't going to require a police officer to back them up to make them work or something else like that. So, putting in stop signs, for example, that's not traffic calming, because that often just leads to people rolling through the stop sign, and then you have to send a police officer out there to make sure to write tickets for people that don't stop. So the focus here is on identifying an appropriate solution, figuring out what the real problem is, and making sure the solution is going to work 24/7 without the need for any kind of police backup or anything else. Once we have that solution, then what we can do is we can get some community feedback on that, either through a community meeting, maybe distributing a brochure to all the affected people on that street asking, do you support this traffic calming solution? But the opportunity to do that also provides the opportunity to respond to that feedback, maybe make some changes or adjustments to the traffic calming plan before it's implemented. And that leads us to the last stage of the traffic calming process, which is actually implementing traffic calming. So the policy will provide some guidelines regarding the design and construction of traffic calming devices, provide some order of magnitude costs that can be used for budgeting purposes, and some guides as to how to establish priorities in cases where you may have multiple locations where traffic calming is needed but don't have the resources to do them all at once. Also, the policy will provide some guidance regarding monitoring, because what you want to do is you want to be able to follow up later to find out, did the traffic calming actually resolve the problem that was there? Is there a need for some changes, or is there a need for some additional measures? So that's the 4-step process that the policy will outline. Now let's talk just briefly about Bay Street and how that 4-step process actually would apply to Bay Street, where residents have basically already taken care of step 1, initiation. Residents have reported a traffic safety issue. You've received a petition from council. There was even an email that was read out earlier in the meeting regarding Bay Street. So we know that it's more than just one resident on Bay Street that thinks there's an issue. There are several. As well, it indicates that there's community support for a traffic calming solution, so council and staff can be confident that a solution would be welcomed by the community on Bay Street. We then go to step 2 of the process, which was screening. Again, that's where we evaluate the option. So I think in this case, it's pretty clear there is a speeding option, just anecdotal reports. It's also a 30-kilometer-an-hour playground zone. And certainly my experience has been elsewhere that wherever you got a 30-kilometer-an-hour playground zone, you likely have people who are speeding. They're going much more than 30 kilometers an hour. So I don't doubt there's a speeding issue there. There are no sidewalks on the road as well. That was something that was mentioned in that email earlier. So there's some pedestrian safety issues associated with that as well. So I think this, following that screening step, we can say, yes, we have a legitimate traffic calming issue here, needs a traffic calming solution. So now we're at step 3, development. So that's where we are right now, which is to identify the optimum solution or solutions for Bay Street, with the idea that when we do that, we should be able to implement something this summer, which is step 4 on Bay Street. So looking at Bay Street, we have basically a 30-kilometer-an-hour playground zone either side of Edna Bachelor Park. There's a crosswalk right at the park, and there's a trail down to the beach just east of the park, and is shown by the green line there. Council has a resolution to move the crosswalk from where it is at the park east on Bay Street to where the 90-degree bend is in that green line, and the trail or pathway that is now on the south side of Bay Street would actually then be on the north side of Bay Street. So people coming up the trail from the beach would cross the crosswalk, walk along the north side of Bay Street on the pathway to the park. So options, obviously, the 2 obvious options for Bay Street that I would be looking at would be speed humps, as the residents have requested, and or a raised crosswalk. So those 2 in combination would help deal with the speeding issue, pedestrian safety at the crosswalk, consistent with a 30-kilometer-an-hour playground zone, and the conditions on Bay Street. So that's basically where we're at today. I haven't identified a final solution yet. I certainly welcome your comments and observations regarding Bay Street, but that's how the policy would apply. Those 4 steps were basically at the 3rd step of that 4-step process that the policy describes. So just to summarize everything, I've talked about the traffic calming policy. I'd like to have one for you, a draft policy for you to consider and staff to review in May. Maybe by the time it gets to you, it might be June, but in May or June, that's something to come to you for your approval. And then traffic calming measures can be implemented on Bay Street this summer. So that's my presentation. Certainly welcome any questions and comments from you regarding traffic calming.
Thank you, Mr. Drudel, for that presentation. Any questions from Council? Councillor Cole?
Sorry, I can't help it. Perhaps through the acting mayor. If it was earlier in the day, I might be able to come up with it on my own because it's probably a super simple thing. I'm wondering if you could describe the physics behind the 8% grade, because in my mind, I'm seeing Bowen Luke Duke and the General Lee and cars, in the air. And can you just tell me where or from what direction the 8% comes into play?
Well, the 8% is the measure of the road before you put the speed hump in. So 8% means it goes up 8 units for every 100 units horizontal. So for a meter of horizontal, it goes up 8 centimeters. It sounds 8% isn't that steep, but more to the point, a speed hump isn't that severe. It's not like a skateboard ramp. You're not going to catch air off it no matter how hard you try. A speed hump is 4 meters long and is only 8 centimeters high. So it's not, it's enough that if you're driving fast in a car, you'll feel it and it's uncomfortable, but you're not going to be able to catch air off a speed hump at all.
Sorry, I probably sounded more elementary than I meant. I get the 8% grade. I get what that means. But how does a speed bump, like you said, it's wide, it's shallow. How does that not work on 8%? From which direction?
It works on 8%. They're not advised on grades over 8% just because, honestly, I mean, the guidelines of 8% are rather arbitrary. There's a couple of communities that have experimented with it up to 10%, but it becomes sometimes there's a issue with wet pavement, snow, that sort of thing. It's not so much the physics of the device; it's some of the other road conditions that are applicable on a grade.
Fair enough.
But in most cases, you're able to do something with speed humps. There's not too many sections of road that are over 8%.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Noel?
Great, thank you. Hey, a great presentation. Thank you for your thoroughness. I can tell that you've been on the subject matter for a little while. Since we got you on the hook here, I do have some questions. I do love obviously on Peninsula Road, those couple signs indicating people's speeds have been very beneficial, I think. Normally, when a community is looking to perhaps install those, is there a need to always go back and hire a traffic consultant in order to put things like what your speed display signs? Maybe you could tell us a little bit the process, your opinion of that.
Not sure. Maybe I'm not quite understanding. Like the speed signs, are you saying if you wanted to put one in yourself, would you need to hire a consultant, or could you just go out and direct staff to stick one in? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest that, again, that's where the traffic calming policy comes in. Those signs are great, but I think, like all things, they're at the risk of overuse. You wouldn't want to start dropping them in everywhere. You want to put them in a place where you can't deal with the traffic issue some other way. I mean, in some cases, a speed hump is the best, right? Because the speed hump really does not force, but pretty much ensures that people slow down, whereas people can't disregard a sign. So it's more the sort of thing you do when you can't do a speed hump, for example. I would suggest the policy will tell you where those would be appropriate, and as long as you're kind of consistent with the policy, you don't have to hire a traffic engineer. Your staff can make that decision and put it in.
In your policy that you'll be presenting to us, will it also, because one of the things, obviously, tourism's a big thing. Town's been quiet for 6 months, and we now have tourism coming back. And one of the struggles they have is not just speed signs. Would you be able to talk a little bit about directing people to their destination? We have, again, a lot of tourists traveling to the community, relying on their electronic device in order to get them destination, which brings them down streets like Bay Street to get to Black Rock. I haven't said it out loud, but sometimes, for some of us in our neighborhoods, we'd love to see local traffic only signs. I don't want to be that community that has signs every 10 feet, but I do know that there's probably some value having, main corridors for the tourists to get to their destination that's clearly signed at least.
Well, I don't know the situation in Ucluelet. I was curious, though. I did hear about shortcutting, so I went into Google Maps and Apple Maps, and I pretended I was coming into Ucluelet, and I was heading for Big Beach, and I wanted to see which way they would send me. They sent me down Rainforest, they sent me down Matterson, but nobody sent me down Bay Street. So okay. I guess my experience has been, and this is just anecdotal. This is in other communities. Sure. It could be different in Ucluelet, but in other communities, it's not the visitors that are the ones causing the problems. If someone who's new to a community, first time there, they're not likely to be speeding. They don't know the road. They don't know what's up ahead. My experience has been 99% of the time, the offenders are the people who live there. They're the ones that know the shortcut routes. They've driven down that road 100 times. They know what's around the corner, so they're going fast. So a local traffic only sign, honestly, like my experience has been that's often the problem is the local traffic. Unless you stop the people and see who they are, you don't know that. But the one community where there was a complaint about all the residents were complaining, we sent the cops out there, and the only two people they caught were the husband and wife that were their chief complainers. So, I would say that better than not so much worrying about who it might be that's doing the speeding. I think, to use Bay Street as an example, I think we can be pretty confident that you've got a speeding issue given that you have a 30-kilometer-hour playground zone. There's nothing to prevent people from going fast. It's a fairly straight road. There's even some downhills leading to the park. So I think in those circumstances, the policy will say, hey, this is pretty cut and dry. You can go ahead and consider some traffic calming. And it really doesn't matter if it's a visitor or a resident. We'll just want to make sure that whoever it is, they're driving appropriately.
Hey, thank you for your clarity. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your questions. Councillor Hoare?
I have a couple things. I know we don't have it used yet, but your curb extensions examples, I know that there can be issues with vehicle turning radiuses when you extend the curbs on corners, especially for large delivery vehicles and things. When you have to turn into oncoming traffic and we are a tourist destination, there is no way to make that turn because people keep coming up to the stop sign. Not really a question, just a statement.
Yeah, and it's a good comment. I mean, every corner, every intersection has what we call a design vehicle, and you would make sure that your design vehicle can get around the corner properly. You can still have a curb extension even with a larger corner radius. So it really is a matter of designing each corner. But certainly when you do curb extensions, whether you do them as part of traffic calming or as part of like a streetscape plan on Peninsula Road or whatever, yeah, you'll want to make sure that you look at those turning radii on every corner.
Perfect, thanks. One other thing, I know that it was in my mind when we did originally asked for the report on traffic calming, and that was just a general speed reduction in town.
Yes. I didn't talk about that, and I don't think I'm going to cover that in the policy, but one thing I will discuss with James is it might be useful to write a separate memo to you on that. My recommendation is that the best approach right now for you or any municipality is to wait and see what happens. I mean, the idea of a general speed reduction is not a bad idea. It's something that's been done in a couple of municipalities to date, but one of the big logistical problems is right now you have to put a sign up on every road that has the reduced speed. So it can get to be very expensive, like over $10,000 for every kilometer of roadway. So that's a lot of money to spend on signs. The province is looking at making changes to the Motor Vehicle Act that might actually allow you to do that without all those signs. So you'd hate to go out and spend $50,000 putting a bunch of signs up to reduce the speed just to find out that 2 years later that you don't need those signs anymore. The other thing is that honestly, when it comes to traffic calming, if you have a real speeding problem, reducing the speed limit by putting signs up or whatever doesn't usually solve the problem. It's a good idea overall, the general speed reduction, but if you have an actual traffic calming issue, a speeding issue, you're not going to solve it that way. So I would prefer you focus your money in the short term on traffic calming solutions, wait for the province to do something with the Motor Vehicle Act, learn from the experience in the few communities that have done that area-wide or community-wide speed reduction so that when you do it, you can do it at the lowest possible cost and in the right manner.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment that obviously since our first year of term, I'm a fan and supportive of anything that looks like or resembles a speed bump or a speed hump. So I just like to put a shout out for them.
It was all about bollards at first, but then it turned to speed humps. Mr. McIntosh, you have 4 questions for us. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Through the mayor, we have we've covered them in a way through our conversation here, but just to absolutely direct and inform the next step in our policy, I'll just ask them quickly to council and have the conversations. So, does council support the proposed goals and objectives, and are there additional objectives that should be included or other considerations in the policy?
I would say that council does support the proposed goals and objectives wholeheartedly.
With traffic calming measures, does council favor, which traffic calming measures does council favor? Are there any measures that council is uncertain about? And if so, what concerns does council have?
Councillor Cole?
I'll just comment that, I will always be the person talking about turning radiuses for trucks, only because I've watched it affect our trucks trying to get into work, and also the guy in my life who drives a truck.
And I think you know that we love speed humps and raised crosswalks, so those 2 can be ticked off right away. I've often wondered if a traffic circle would work at the top of Main Street. That's always been an accident waiting to happen, and yet no accident has ever happened there.
Mr. Doodle, your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't quite know where you mean by top of Main Street, but a traffic circle, or if it's, the bigger version of traffic circles called a roundabout, and I'm sure you've seen them, all over the place. They're great. I love them. They're not cheap. Traffic circles are cheap because you just drop them in the middle of an existing intersection, but you tend to use those only on neighborhood streets. When you get to something like Peninsula Road, or something like that, where it's more of a major street, then you're into something like a roundabout, and those start to cost some serious money. So again, worth doing. I've just finished up doing one with the town of Qualicum Beach down on the waterfront, and we're talking a couple $1 million, but there's some environmental issues and everything else. But all four of them, if you're building a road new, then definitely consider a roundabout or a traffic circle. And by the way, I just want to add, speed humps aren't my favorite traffic calming measure too. It's just that they don't work in 100% of the cases, so that's why I talk about the other stuff.
Understood. Where I was talking about was where Main Street and Peninsula meet, and
yeah, so that would probably end up being a roundabout more so than a traffic circle. It's got to be something that can handle larger vehicles. So back to the comment about trucks and turning radii, you've got to be able to get a larger vehicle through that thing. You may not physically have the room for a roundabout. They tend to have a bigger footprint than a regular intersection. But if you have some safety issues there are other ways of dealing with them that may be less expensive and equally effective.
The issue tends to be people running the stop sign. There's one stop. It's the biggest stop sign that we're allowed to have. And there's even a flashing light, and people still drive straight through.
Yeah, I'm not a great fan of stop signs just because of exactly what you're talking about. Oh yeah, I'm having a look at it right now in Google Maps. It's maybe there's something that could be done there. I don't want to speculate. It's sort of live, but James and I maybe can chat about that afterwards.
Councillor Cole?
I'm just going to make, the chief is not here, our fire chief, Mr. Geddes, isn't here, so I'm just going to speak from his perspective for a second, the top of the hill, and I think of it in the ambulance also. If we had a circle there that we had to go around, I can just imagine if you were headed towards, out of town in a big box on the anyways, it would be sketchy there, but I agree something has to be done there. But in any of these ideas where we're thinking about roundabouts, the fire trucks obviously are something that is paramount.
Keep in mind always, yeah.
Yep, so I'll just move, I'll keep speed humps high and traffic circles low here. Moving on to question 3. Is council comfortable with the proposed 4-step process for traffic calming? Are there any changes to the processes that council would like to consider?
I think we're comfortable with the proposed 4 steps. Do any councillors have any other suggestions? No? Okay. Good to go.
Lastly, does council agree with the proposal to require requests for traffic calming to include demonstrated community support of affected residences or businesses prior to a staff council review?
I would say yes to that one as well. I think when Gray submitted his request to us a few months back about Bay Street, he had a large number of signatures from all the neighbors, and I think that does go a long way to show support for something that is going to be changed potentially. Any other comments from council?
Okay, excellent. So at this point, we've brought an expert in to inform the district on what the best practice is to solve really all of our traffic calming challenges in the years and decades ahead, potentially by guiding to this policy. We'll return to council with that draft policy in May, and then we'll solve Bay Street and many others after that.
Thank you for your solving our issues. For decades to come, yes. Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. This brings us to the end of the Committee of the Whole portion of the meeting. I would like to make a motion that the Committee of the Whole portion of the meeting be adjourned at 5:24 p.m. to return to the regular meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we are moving on to bylaws. 10.1. The 2022 to 2026 5-year financial plan and annual tax rate bylaws. Ms. Monteith is here. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. I graduated out of my pajamas today, but I'm sorry I can't attend in person. I'm still a little bit sick. So through the chair, this report covers both the five-year financial plan and the tax rate bylaws. The budget period began with open meetings in December of 2021, with more meetings in 2022. Along the way, property tax increases were introduced, and then a further 3% specifically for the debt, which will be created for the water filtration project, was presented. Public feedback was invited throughout the process, and the feedback period was extended when the extra 3% was carried by council. So we sent out several notifications through our regular social media, website, and Yuki mail avenues, and Nora from the Westerly ran an excellent article on the front page of the Westerly as well. So thank you, Nora, for that. So despite my best attempts, I have not received even one piece of written feedback to give to council today. Just a couple of verbal accolades regarding looking at saving money and reserves for asset management. And I think the managers are getting tired of my "there's no new money" mantra. Further to that, the revised role was published by BC Assessments, and usually it's to our detriment. But this year it was actually okay. And I do have a slide to demonstrate how it's going to affect our tax today. And share, start. Sorry, just 1 minute here. All right. So I think the last meetings that we had talked about the tax increase being an overall 11.06% in regards to single family residential. And sorry, the people are over top of the slide, so now I can't see the slide. Oh, there we go. So now it's going to be 10.96. So it's reducing a little bit. It was a little over 11%. So now it's 10.96. And so I've just demonstrated on the slide the small decreases in each class since the last time that we met, and that's in regards to the revised role. The assessments went down a little bit, but we made up for it in non-market changes. So it's a small decrease in the tax request, but it is a decrease nonetheless. And then I just have one final slide that shows our residential burden is 63% of the people that are here. And then it has all the other classes listed out in the pie chart. So business is 35% of our tax, and then residential 63%. So our total 2022 taxation levy is $3.594 million. So we've kind of talked a lot about the budget over the last few months. I don't know if there's any questions, but if not, when you do get to the recommendations, if you could consider them separately, that would be great.
Thank you, Ms. Monteith. Any questions from council? I do have one, and I think you explained it to us once. I'm looking at the Schedule A, and under revenue, it's fairly consistent over the 5 years, except for 2023, which is quite a bit lower. And just wonder if you could explain that to us one more time.
Sorry, the line, which line are you referring to?
Oh, total revenue for 2023. It's just lower than all the other 4 years.
Right. It just means that we have, for the most part, our capital projects, the amounts that we're spending in 2023 is a little bit less. And so you see the steep incline in 2024 moving forward in the grants and donations.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no further questions, could I get the first motion, please?
Sure. I will move that the District of Ucluelet 2022 to 2026 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 1307-2022 be given first, second, and third reading.
I'll second all three readings.
Any further comments? All in favor? Opposed? And carried. And the second motion?
I will move that the District of Ucluelet Annual Tax Rates Bylaw Number 1308-2022 be given first, second, and third reading.
Another second. And first and third. For the second.
Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried. Excellent. Thank you for your report, Ms. Monteith.
Thank you.
All right, the next bylaw is 10.2, Election and Assent Voting Bylaw Number 1305-2022. Ms. Mason, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Today I'd like to present the amended Election and Assent Voting Bylaw to Council for your consideration. On March 29th, 2022, Council gave first, second, and third readings to the bylaw. Since that meeting, a typo has been noted in section 9B. It mistakenly read recruit, appoint, and train any other presiding election officials and elected officials that are needed to run the election on voting days. It should have read recruit, appoint, and train any other presiding election officials and election officials that are needed to run the election on voting days.
Those darn typos, eh?
Yes, that was my typo. As a result, staff are requesting that Council rescind third reading, approve the revision, and give the bylaw third reading as amended. Council will then be in a position to adopt the bylaw. So Part 3 of the Local Government Act governs how municipal elections are run. However, local governments are responsible for adopting bylaws that will govern particular aspects of the actual election, such as the manner for resolving ties, whether to allow mail-in ballots, and other administrative details. The attached revised bylaw provides us with a document that shows the choices of the District of Ucluelet when given these various options. It also will provide a set of administrative decisions that our current Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officers can follow going forward. If it is Council's intention to adopt the bylaw, may I please ask that the recommended resolutions be read individually. In the meantime, can I answer any questions?
Any questions from Council? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Sure, I'm happy to go ahead with the recommendations that we're going to draw names.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Right. I will read that Council rescind third reading of Elections and Assent of Voting Bylaw Number 1305-2022.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? And carried.
And that Council give third reading to Elections and Assent Voting Bylaw Number 1305-2022 as amended.
I'll second that amendment.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried.
And that Council adopt the Elections and Assent Voting Bylaw Number 1305-2022.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Mason.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, we're on to our reports. There are two reports today. 11.1 Amphitrite Point Park Project Funding. Ms. Fortune.
Good afternoon. Oh, that's loud. Sorry. Good afternoon. In front of you, you have a proposed project funding for the Amphitrite Point Park project. In 2018, we costed out the project at $1.36 million. And obviously, as we all know, there's been significant increases over the years. And with our new Class B cost estimate from March 2022, we came in at $2.1 million for the entire project. So a bit of a jump between the two. So what I'm proposing in front of you is to actually put this project into two phases. Phase one would be primarily focusing on the Amphitrite House itself, with access and ensuring that that space is accessible. And phase two would be landscaping that we would look at in a future date. This allows us to get the primary core of the project done and completed and done in a productive way. As this is primarily a tourism function for the municipality, what I'm proposing is the shortfall from the original costing of $331,000 would come from RMI funding. So that would need to be an amendment on the budget. So we've got three options in front of you. One is to do the recommendation as stated. The other one would be to go the whole $2.1 million, where we would have to look at probably Barclay Forest community funds as well to make the shortfall of just over $771,000. I said, yes, I did say that correctly. And the third would be to reduce the project scope down to meet the initial budget of 2018. It is not something I would recommend. It's too much of a decrease in scope. That's high level. Is there questions?
I've got one for you.
Please.
Your report says staff have contacted the province regarding the RMI fund and are in the process of confirming that the additional allocation to the project will be supported.
That's correct.
Has that been
We've got
finalized?
we do have a verbal.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council? Okay, then we have some recommendations.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's my turn. All at once or separately, Ms. Fortune?
If you could separately, please.
Yes, money things. I will move that council direct staff to remove the landscaping component from the Amphitrite Point Park project.
I'll second, and then can we comment?
Yeah.
Additional comments?
Sorry, through the chair to Ms. Fortune, I just want to be very clear that we are, all three of these recommendations that we have listed before us mean that any of the additional funds that we need due to the increase in the estimate are coming from the resort municipality initiatives, like it reads. And in order to do that and complete, we're removing the landscaping so that we can afford to do it without Barclay Community Forest funds, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What then is the plan for the landscaping?
Very good question. Through the acting mayor, we will be doing some initial landscaping in the first phase one project. One of our big requirements would be to make sure it's accessible. So the top area of the landscaping, we will still be focusing on the accessibility. The other issue we're going to be looking at is the remainder of the landscaping area, and we have potential to look at some more tourism funding, but we don't want to slow down the project either because we are on the timeline. So that is something we will be further looking at to ensure that ultimately we do have a landscaping component to the project.
So to be very clear in what you said, with the accessibility will remain part of the plan, so the overall landscaping accessibility, but the beautification part of it is the part that will be deferred to future funds from somewhere, some way, shape, and form.
That's a good way of putting it, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried.
I will move that council direct staff to amend the 2022 to 2026 capital budget to include an additional allocation of $331,230 from the Resort Municipality Initiative funds for total project cost of $1,692,000 for the Amphitrite Point Park project.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I have a comment, if you don't mind.
Mayor Noel?
So Ms. Fortune, just for process here, we get you your funds, you're moving ahead. When's the next step that this council is going to see a detailed plan for any kind of comments? Could you share that?
That's a very good question. One of the things we'll do if this does in fact pass tonight is we will be doing a request for proposals. And actually, I'm going to look at Mr. McIntosh to maybe help me out a little bit here on this one. James, do you want to come up and sort of some next steps that might give you a better picture?
To the mayor. So next step is to go through a request for proposals, as Ms. Fortune has mentioned. And at that stage, there'd also be a contract authorization that would come to council for approval to build that home. And so that would happen in fairly short order. So along with that would be a completed design set, which would be available for comments and questions.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll have another opportunity to discuss about the details. So thank you.
Any further comments?
None for me.
All in favor? Any opposed? And carried.
All right, I will move that council direct staff to proceed with the issuance of a request for proposal for the completion of the Amphitrite House project.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fortune. The second report before us is 11.2, the CARE Network Proposal for Comprehensive Animal-Related Services. Ms. Mason, welcome back.
Thank you. So the report that Council already has provides all the background information for the CARE Network's requests over the last couple of years. With regards to the organization's request for council support in establishing a regional animal kenneling service, it would seem that the CARE Network does offer many services that are a benefit to the peninsula as a whole, even if some of these are outside of the services the municipality is usually responsible for. It's before council today to decide if they wish to add a service to the municipality or simply support the process of the CARE Network applying to become a regional service. If council wishes to add a service, any service provider being considered needs to provide certification and accreditation to show the basic provisions, such as the ones mentioned on page 110 of the agenda, are being met as required. Some of these include, but are not limited to, staff certification as well as facility certification. Option A that's before council today provides the option for council to write a letter of support for CARE Network's application for a regional service to be established under the management of the ACRD. Option B gives council a way to continue contributing to the CARE Network as a nonprofit organization through the district's grant and aid program without having to add a new service. That's a basic rundown of a lengthy report that's already been provided. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council? Thank you for this report, Ms. Mason. It's extremely thorough.
Thank you.
And just a question, can a copy of this report be sent to James at the CARE Network?
Absolutely.
Because there are some recommendations, as you mentioned, on page 110 that maybe he's not even aware of for a municipality to enlist services. The qualifications need to be verified that the facility meets them and the staff meets them.
Absolutely. I'm happy to forward a report or this report over to James.
Thank you. Any questions from council? So we have
I'll just make a couple comments if you don't mind.
Mayor Noel.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It was a very thorough report. Struggle with it. Obviously, the CARE network is something I'm very supportive of. I think that you illustrated the importance that there's a few dots and to dot and T's to cross, perhaps that the CARE network may or may not be privy to. I was really leaning towards B, to be frank, but knowing the reasons why staff have provided option A before us, I'm okay with that. But I think the CARE network knows that their door is always open, and I'm hoping that Director Cole and the West Coast Committee might be able to get some momentum behind more of a regional approach, because I think that is something that will be dearly welcome to the region. So that's all I have to comment.
Thank you, Mayor Noel. I think we can continue to encourage the CARE network to apply for our grant and aid funding, but I think option A is the better one for this purpose.
And just one last, you're looking at my chicken scratch here. I was, not that I want to cloud the waters, but I do that sometimes. Obviously, license revenue, as we talk about revenue and the cost of animals on the West Coast, I'm going to make just an assumption that most dogs and cats are not getting tags. And again, that it's illustrated on page 108. Not that I want to see bylaw chasing down all the stray cats and stuff here, but the reality is a lot of these cats are having it appears through CARE Network's numbers, having some direct cost here in the community.
Thank you for your comments. Could I have a motion for recommendation A?
I'll do one if you don't mind.
Please.
You know, take the pressure off the other two. That council approve option A to direct staff to write a letter of support to the ACRD asking that they consider CARE Network's proposal to establish a regional West Coast animal kenneling service, and further, the council directs staff to write letters of support on behalf of the CARE Network for use in any grant applications they choose to submit.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I'm just going to say I have a new dog that this has triggered me to bring him down and get a license. So I'm 2 weeks delinquent on this new guy, but I'm going to be following up at the district office tomorrow.
Get Haas a license. Come on. He's like twice the size of an average dog. He needs, yeah, you should pay twice.
Yeah, that is, yeah, for sure. That's $10 a day on dog food alone now.
Any further discussion?
I'm just going to comment that I think a regional option is really what we need out here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where their facility exists in Area C already at the airport. So a natural thing, yeah. Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried. Thank you, Ms. Mason. That was a very good report.
Thank you.
Item 12, notice of motion. Does council have any notices of motion?
I do. Sorry, have to wake up my iPad. I am going to bring a motion forward to our next regular council meeting. It's regarding a piece of correspondence that we all received about World Oceans Day, which is June 8th. It is the 30th anniversary of World Oceans Day. And part of the Paris Accords was that Canada promised to protect 30% of the oceans by 2030. And it is a recommendation just supporting that and bringing it forward, because I think we need to be more vocal, because we're right here and the ocean is, I can probably throw a ball that far, maybe. Or a tomato, for that matter. So I'm going to bring that motion forward, and I will make sure that everybody has the correspondence again.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hoare. Okay, we're moving into correspondence. Pardon? Oh, we need a motion for a quick 5-minute break.
I'll make the motion or second it or something.
Yeah, I'll do
second
it.
Bio break for all. Okay, 5 minutes at 5:49. Okay, we'll reconvene at 5:55. So we're into correspondence now. 13.1, notes from the meeting of the Ucluelet Concerned Citizens on March 21st. Thank you for providing that summary. That was really helpful. And just wondering if staff...
Pardon me, Chair. We should wait for the rest of council. We can't technically move on until the rest of council returns.
Oh, I think it's happening right now. There he is. Oh,
yeah.
So close. There he is. Okay, so correspondence. 13.1, notes from the meeting of the Ucluelet Concerned Citizens of March 21st. Thank you for providing that summary. And just wondering if, through Mr. Lawrence, if staff can discuss the possibility of a couple of suggestions here, a display board with the plans of the Village Green revitalization that could be prominently placed somewhere near the Village Green. It happens in larger municipalities. Every time you see a construction zone, there's a beautiful sort of layout of what the end result's going to look like. Is that a possibility, Mr. Lawrence?
I believe there already is some display boards. We can add on to them. I'm just sorry. I believe there is one report that we just skipped over, which is the tourism master plan at item 14.1. So we might need to back up once.
But we're at 13.1.
Oh, my apologies. I'm way ahead.
You're hungry.
Sorry. To answer the chair's question, yes, we can put up display boards and additional for the Village Green project. There are some, I believe, on the playground fencing facing some of the businesses up facing away from the water, but we can add additional boards if needed.
And then there was another recommendation to put a couple of community boards, perhaps at the district office and the UCC, and those are like cork boards, I imagine, where things can be pinned to show citizens what things are being planned.
Absolutely. So if council's wishing to see more community boards or kiosks available in the community, we can look at options for council's consideration as to key areas that would be most effective for gaining the most audience. I believe Sam McCullough has been looking into this already and identified a couple of areas, including near the post office and the co-op, as areas where the public will most likely be on a regular basis to have the greatest audience that we can possibly get for the notice boards.
Great, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. It's funny, one of the main boards used to be right beside the Crow's Nest for many, many years when the post office was down there. And I'm sorry I couldn't make that meeting on that Monday. Mondays are my Toastmasters nights, and so I wasn't able to be there. But Councillor Cole was, and Mayor Noel. And Mayor Noel has his hand up.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Lawrence, when we talk about signs and stuff, one of the goals we had, I don't think I've spoken to you about this. The secondary school has an electric signboard which hasn't worked for probably about 2 years now. The district, if Mr. Alawa is still in the room, the district paid, I believe, for half of that sign with the understanding that it was going to be used to have community information posted on it. Unfortunately, since it started, it never actually did do that, other than tell the time and the temperature. So there may be an opportunity for staff when we talk about trying to get the message out to revisit what that secondary school sign, its purpose is, and if there's a way to integrate it into some of our messaging that we want to get out that we feel is important.
Good point. Thanks for remembering that. Anything further to the letter from the Ucluelet Concerned Citizens? No? Okay. 13.2, the case for basic income for municipalities. That was supported by the AVICC Resolutions Committee, so probably nothing further to discuss there. (13.3) renewing Tofino General Hospital. That was interesting to see in the letter from the Tofino Chamber of Commerce that Island Health has prioritized the replacement of the Tofino General Hospital in their top capital project recommendations to the Ministry of Health. Any comments on that, Councillor Cole, since you sit on that health committee, hospital committee?
I think it reads better than what I've heard previous.
So it's being a little optimistic. Anything further comments for that piece of correspondence? No. Okay, so moving on to information items, 14.1 Tourism Master Plan Update Presentation. Ms. Fortune.
Through the mayor, thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to pass this off pretty quickly. We've been working, Tourism Ucluelet and the District of Ucluelet have been working together to create a tourism master plan. And we've got Dan on the line here. And Dan's going to walk through what we've done. So this is to provide you with an update as to what, as well as next steps as we move forward. And this helps to inform things like our resort development strategy and the municipal regional district tax. I think that's right. Yes. And I got it right. As we move forward. And so this is a solid document for the community as well as we plan our future and tie in with the OCP. So Dan, are you on? There he is. And I'd like to introduce you to Dan Wilson. He's with WCS Engagement. Dan also does a lot of the work with the RMI communities, so it's a really nice tie-in for understanding of how resort municipalities work. And Dan was one of the key components that put the Fernie project together. That is a really good document. So without further ado, and Dan, thanks for taking the time. I'll pass it over to you.
Welcome, Dan.
Yeah, thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Mayor Noel, yeah, okay. Great. Fantastic. And I'll let you, you're going to drive the slides then, are you? Or did you want me to share my screen?
I think, what would you like? Dan, would you like to share the screen? Does that make more sense?
That'd make it a little bit easier, yeah, if I could do that. Yeah.
Please.
So just let me do that.
If you could.
See my jacket there. Okay, so advance screen. Okay, let's just get this set up. Okay. All right. Do you see the same slide?
Yes, that's great. Thanks, Dan.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Again, thanks so much, everyone, for having me here tonight to provide an update. This is similar to an update that we provided to the Tourism Ucluelet AGM just recently with a couple updates to it. So just a quick agenda. I'll go over the plan purpose, the process and engagement to date, the plan elements, vision, goals, directions, and next steps. And I should just note as well that I'm based out of Whistler at the moment, and I'm speaking from the unceded territory of the Liwat and the Squamish Nation here. So. All right, so just moving into the purpose of the plan. The purpose of doing a tourism plan and the process is to identify a shared community vision for tourism, articulate after that vision short-term actions that last are covered kind of in this next 6 months to 3 years, set some medium-term strategic directions or strategies that should last 3 to 5 years, and then ensure some long-term 10-year goals and vision for tourism. They want to build on the assets that have made tourism successful in the area to date, everything from the wonderful natural assets to the built assets to the relationships and connections that have made tourism work so far. Want to ensure that tourism aligns with community expectations and manages concerns that residents have around tourism. identify opportunities for meeting changing visitor needs, manage growth as can be done related to tourism in the community, and then recognize the new role of destination management, specifically for destination marketing organizations such as Tourism Ucluelet as well. And just speaking to that last one a little bit, the DMO is kind of the acronym used for destination marketing organizations like Tourism Ucluelet, and more now they're being called destination management organizations. So not just about marketing the community and getting people to come to Ucluelet, but also educating visitors prior to them coming and helping to manage the tourism that occurs to really ensure the most benefits for the local community and limiting as many challenges as possible. So more of a hands-on role with what's happening in the community besides just marketing and inviting folks to Ucluelet. The timeline for the project, we initiated about a year ago, actually, in March. We kicked off to set the stage for the project and then focused quite a bit on where we are now, where Ucluelet is now, really the current situation, and did that through a number of means that I'll talk about in a minute. Through the latter half of the year, we started to talk about where we want to go where Ucluelet wants to go as a community, as a region, and setting some long-term goals for tourism. And then the phase that we're just starting to get close to wrapping up is how will Ucluelet get there, the strategies and the actions to get toward those goals. And then finally, in May, June, starting to share the completed tourism plan. But it has been, parts of the plan have been shared all along the way to get feedback along the way so that we can adapt and improve. And that's part of the goal of today as well. So the engagement for the project has included a resident survey that included about 280 participants taking part in that resident survey. There's a survey also directed at businesses. We had 66 businesses take part in that. 8 in-depth interviews, a questionnaire for some local nonprofit societies to see how they're connected to tourism. And then we took all of that information and started to work through the initial structure of the plan, including the vision and the goals for the 10-year goals for the plan. And then we took those back to the community and actually had a couple of in-person events back before Omicron took off there in, I think it was early November, late October. And we had some focused conversations with 3 groups of tourism entities and organizations. We hosted an open house at the community center where we had 30 participants in an open walk-around format, and then also some conversations with the participants. And we also, of course, reviewed and took into consideration all the existing plans that have been worked on in Ucluelet recently, including the 2020 OCP, the Destination Development Plan for the region done by Destination BC, the Harbour Plan, et cetera, the Housing Needs Assessment, and more recently the long-term growth work that has been done for the region. So a lot of feedback and consideration. The vision elements are really important, and I think just wanted to highlight some of the bullet points and what the themes that we heard from surveys and when we connected with people one-on-one. And these are the things that were really important to residents and businesses in the community. They wanted to ensure balanced and slow growth in the community, ensure that tourism becomes more regenerative, protecting natural resources in the environment, and where possible, restoring those areas through the tourism experiences, being respectful of Indigenous cultures and peoples and what their goals and visions are, preserve the small town character and charm, ensure that visitors are educated and respectful, ensure that the exceptional natural amenities are there, preserved and enhanced and accessible for residents and visitors, remain authentic and preserve that Yuki grit that you're known for, ensure that tourism benefits the community and continues to attract international visitors who will stay for a long time, for multi-days. So those are some of the themes that emerged from all the surveying and conversations we had with the community. And we started to work that into parts of the plan. So these are the parts of the plan Again, these are kind of I wouldn't even say this is quite draft. It's kind of a work in progress piece for these key elements, but they are getting closer to a draft for sharing. So starting with the vision drew from the OCP, the Resort Development Strategy, Tourism Ucluelet work, the MRDT work, and the engagement with residents and businesses in the community. And again, all those bullet points are highlighted from that engagement. So through a couple of iterations, we've worked with a working group of residents and local tourism entities and gathered feedback from folks along the way. And at the moment, the working vision for tourism that we're using is that tourism in Ucluelet welcomes visitors year-round for authentic, immersive, and restorative West Coast experiences that are respectful of our environment, cultures, and peoples. And I would say the year-round piece is the one that is pretty unique and was supported in many different areas and ways of shifting some visitation to shoulder seasons, but also wanting to maintain a bit of a downtime throughout the year where people can have take a bit of a break and a breather from visitation and kind of restore themselves. So trying to strike that balance with that and ensuring it's that way. Some of the images here are from the open house and as we go through this. So. From the working vision, we looked at 10-year focus areas, which each will have a goal. And the focus areas are really the buckets that the actions and the strategies kind of hang on to and starts to build a framework to the plan. And so the 10-year focus areas for the tourism plan to achieve that vision include managed growth, environmental stewardship, diverse and authentic offerings year-round, vibrant businesses and community, and robust tourism foundation. The next couple slides here will elaborate a little bit more on each one of those focus areas with the goal related to the focus area, as well as some initial strategies for achieving them. And what I'll do here is I'll go through the presentation quickly, and then if you want to refer to something, I can go back in those slides if you have any questions specifically about them. So that's all right. So under managed growth, the goal is that tourism growth and development are spread more evenly year-round and are managed within our natural and human capacities. So some sample strategies and directions relate to strategically and intentionally growing tourism in the fall, winter, and spring seasons. Better understand capacities for visitors, the visitor capacities, and understand the leading practices to manage them. So those are sample directions. Each one of these goals and focus areas has between 4 and 6 strategies to help achieve them. So those are just a couple of samples under this particular one here, especially to address some of the concerns that we heard from residents. Under environmental stewardship, the goal is that our visitors are engaged and educated to be stewards of the environment, enjoy it to the fullest, and minimize their impact. So some sample strategies here include protect, enhance, and ensure access to natural areas important to tourism, and encourage greater use of active transportation and transit to, from, and within the community. Vibrant businesses. The goal here is about local businesses thriving, employees being healthy and secure and working in Ucluelet and resulting in a healthy community. So some sample directions in this area include developing better data and monitoring systems to support the tourism growth and improve the visitor experience, increase and support enhanced benefits to ensure retention of employees working in the tourism industry, and support more sustainable and resilient operations in local businesses. With respect to diverse and authentic offerings year-round, the goal here is to continue to provide unique experiences that attract those wanting to visit us, Ucluelet, in any season. Sample strategies include growing arts, culture, and heritage education, essentially those under a roof offerings, to build off what's existing in the shoulder seasons, and increase trail connectivity and networks while respecting neighborhoods. And then finally, a robust tourism foundation. We know that foundations are really important for everything else to work. And so the goal here is to have strong partnerships to ensure the vital infrastructure and resources to support a thriving tourism economy in Ucluelet. So some sample directions here include strengthening partnerships with the neighboring Ucluelet and Toquat communities to offer respectful experiences that also benefit these Indigenous communities. And address affordable housing needs for the community members and employees. Part of this is to help ensure that West Coast job postings don't get as long as you see in this image here. Without employees and without good partnerships within the industry and with neighbors, it's really hard for tourism to work and to make tourism work in the way that you want it in your community. Okay, so just moving on to next steps. So as noted, we have focus areas, we have the goals, we have strategies for those areas as a work in progress and getting very close to a draft. We've also met a number of times to draw out actions from all the engagement we've done, from the plans and from suggestions from the working group. So this is being refined at the moment, and we're going to meet as a working group probably about 2 more times just to confirm actions and the timing for some of those actions, and then a second time to review the draft plan. As part of that, we'll be developing an implementation plan and governance to help ensure that the plan actually gets implemented and that there's a governance structure to ensure that the plan is reviewed at least twice a year, and actions are considered as budgeting is happening in all the different organizations who are helping to implement the plan. There'll also be agreements in place to outline some of the roles and responsibilities to help implement the plan. Once that's done, we'll share a draft around with respective organizations and their boards, including yourself, make any final changes to the plan, and then go toward adoption of the plan. And aiming to try to do that in June. So that's all I've got, just as an update for you. And again, I just want to thank you again for your time and your participation along the way in working through and creating a tourism plan that works for you, Ucluelet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions, Council?
Any questions for Dan? This is the second time I've seen this presentation because I was at the Tourism Ucluelet AGM, and it's just as good this time as it was that time. Doesn't look like we have any questions for you, Dan, so keep up the good work. We'll look forward to seeing the final version.
Great. And again, thanks so much for your support and efforts to promote this project in your community. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, 14.2, update on Village Green, Main and Cedar intersection. Mr. Gregg.
Hello, I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. Okay. Thank you. Just briefly, at the regular meeting in February 22nd, Council received an update report at that time, which had the 70% design development. We're now at the 95% detailed design. At that meeting in February, Council, you'll recall, passed the motion directing staff to work with the Village Green consultants to reduce loss of parking in front of the Crow's Nest building or defer implementation of pedestrian improvements to a future project. And so this report is really sort of, we tasked our engineers and landscape architects with that. And so they have come back and provided the table of the pros and cons that's in the report on page 166 of your agenda, which was really looking at essentially there was three different approaches that they, or sort of commenting on the pros and cons within that table. What was referred to as option one of the 70% that's on your screen was that was really that is the design that was there in February, which was essentially the least what they figured was the least likely to see any concern or opposition from the Ministry of Transportation, who has jurisdiction over Main Street. And so it showed that the parallel parking would still be as is on the park side of Main Street, that the angled parking would be essentially as it is, and that there was then going to be changes at the intersection to remove the 90-degree angled parking. So that was what had been presented in February, and there was discussion of shifting towards angled parking on that side next to the park to increase some parking directly in that area to somewhat balance out some of the displacement of the parking in front of the Crow's Nest area. So in the center of the screen, then what's shown as this is the 95% drawing, and in this image it's superimposed over the air photo, which makes it a little easier to see. That's essentially what the 95% has been developed and is including, which is including that angled parking on the park side. And as noted in the report, that the consultants they looked at it, and really their conclusion was that leaving the 90-degree parking spaces in front of the Crow's Nest where the vehicles back out, you can sort of see these spaces in the air photo that's in the background here. Those spaces backing out into the road, into traffic and in the intersection does not meet engineering standards for road and intersection design. So their recommendation was to proceed with the 95% design to make this a more regular and essentially meet the safety standards, if you will, for the engineering of that intersection. The third option, and that has been included in the 95% set, as we've described before, as council's aware. This is a funded project that we've basically been tasked with bringing this in on time, on budget. The timeline is very tight because of the grants that are involved in this. And so the project has been proceeding, as we'd said previously, so that 95% we've now received, and we'll be working towards putting it out to bid in the coming days and weeks. So that does add a few spaces, adding the angled parking where previously it was parallel parking. And so the net loss now within the plans that are together would be 9 spaces overall in the Village Green area. We also looked at and sort of talked about so I should continue to sort of describe the third option, which is discussed in the table there, was looking at including essentially what is in the 95%, but also trying to keep a couple of the spaces as they are backing out onto the road near the Crow's Nest. And really the concern there is that doesn't comply with any of the engineering standards. So it would be a non-standard intersection design, and that's where the civil engineers raised the concern of whether that would either be approved by the Ministry of Transportation, and if it were, it really would require that it would need a traffic engineer to do a specific analysis of the intersection of the turning movements and the volumes that are there now, and to have their sort of more fine detailed look at it to see if they could sign off on this non-standard kind of approach to that, leaving that parking backing into the road in that proximity to the intersection. So that is not in the scope or the time, the budget for the project. So that what we do note in the report there that if council wished to explore that further, we have given some thought to how that could be moved forward. And if council wishes to sort of go in that direction, then we can advise on sort of how to make that happen. The other thing in the report in Appendix B, I believe it is that we also looked at the Cedar Road parking hub or parking lot that's been constructed, and it was shown in purple here. There's some space there where we looked at there. It appears to be feasible to add 8 spaces in there without having to go into the sort of the second phase. As council will recall, there was some ability to the original design included a second phase that could happen in the future, sort of going up into the trees. But that would take some greater grading and drainage work and would have some impacts. But just using the existing now drive aisles, that there does appear to be some space to add more parking within that public parking lot to, sort of essentially balance or improve the balance of public parking in the immediate vicinity. Beyond that, I had hoped to introduce our engineer, who I just got a message a few minutes ago was unable to stick around to be here for this segment of the meeting. He did note that if council wishes more detail, they can speak to the engineering sort of constraints and the standards if you'd like that detail from them. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not a traffic engineer or a civil engineer, but tried to sort of paraphrase at a high level the approach and the conclusions that they came to that have informed the design. But beyond that, I would just see if there are any questions from council.
Any questions from council?
No one's going first?
It's you first, Mayor Noel.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Gregg. I guess my first question is, please leave that screen up. When you look at parking stall 3 to 8 on the side, the parallel parking, the angled parking, if the district in the next 5-10 years gets an applicant or a building permit for those lots, would those lots then be required to have off-street parking on them? And I'm just worried about the accessibility to those where, you see it. I'm just wondering your thoughts.
So I think through the chair, I believe, so this hatched mark that's shown, I don't know if you can see my cursor. I've got it on sort of the red dot mode. So this hatched area is where currently there's paint stripes to sort of discourage parking in that area. And that's a bit historic where I gather there was some parking for the post office years ago. So that is in the current design is not being used up for parking. So if that were to become a more formalized driveway entrance, essentially there is space allowing for that with this property. The other property that is vacant currently sort of is the immediate, so we're talking about the one that's immediately next to the Crow's Nest. Further down towards the Blackberry Cove building, there's another property in there. We've had some discussions with that property owner. And part of it, they were asking about is the possibility of taking access up from the rear. Because yes, it would mean the existing angled parking, if a driveway access were to go in there, you'd lose some angled parking. But the other option would be to look at taking access through the municipal parking lot up to the rear, if it were to have a truly sort of pedestrian storefront kind of development there, that parking could be essentially using the parking lot that we have off the back here. I'll switch to the aerial because it kind of shows it. That you've got these two areas here, and potentially, essentially both of them potentially could be accessed sort of off the lane, if you will, off the parking area, to keep Main Street, for more angled parking and for sort of a better pedestrian experience.
Right. Okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate. I wasn't in the meeting when the motion was to come back with this report. But I do appreciate it. I am supportive of the angle parking where traditionally it's parallel right now. I think when you go through communities like Ladysmith, that's what I see. The only comment I would have is I'm surprised that there's only one handicap parking out of the whole downtown core. And as recent as today, when I was coming up Cedar, headed towards Main Street, I had a lovely Lincoln Navigator almost back into me. So I do understand the importance of that, of changing that intersection to allow it to be a bit safer. I look at the option 3, And even with those additional parking spot of 1 and 2, it still doesn't get us away from vehicles packing into the intersection. But I'll wait to hear what the rest of the councillors have to say with what has been presented. Thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, this is sort of zooming in just on this intersection because the council motion in February was really sort of focused on this immediate area. This is not the only accessible parking spot in the whole Village Green area. It's just the one that's in view in this sort of corner at this time.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarity.
Yeah.
Further comments? Councillor Cole?
Through the chair to Mr. Gregg, so option 3 is there's lots of pink, yellow, and orange in that column. I'm wondering if then the 2 extra parking spots because of the is there 2 extra because of the angled on the right-hand side? And then in third option, there's 2 more there, still remaining at the Crow's Nest, albeit still near that intersection, but definitely not on the corner where my grandmother backed into somebody many years ago also. And then additional 8 spots in purple that don't currently exist in the parking behind in the Cedar. So would that be a total of 12 spots since we've looked at it last?
Okay, so since we've looked at it last, there was in the 70% design, there was a deficit of 12 spaces. With going to the angled parking, that gains us. We've gained 3 spaces, so we're now at a deficit of 9. That's in the 95% set. That third option they looked at of keeping a couple of the perpendicular spaces backing out would add a couple more back into the accounting of it, if you will. The look at adding potentially, it looks like we could get 8 parking spaces into the Cedar parking lot behind the Crow's Nest, in that public parking lot, and adding 8 public parking spaces in that area would bring the balance to a loss of 1 parking space. Does that add up?
My math had it that we'd be up 1, but it's the end of the day. So
being up 1 would, I think, be if you're including the third option.
Okay.
And I should just clarify in the report that this is not standard and is not what's currently in the 95% design, because our civil engineers, they design to what is a engineered safety standard. This would require additional work by a specialized traffic engineer. Likely they would do traffic counts at the intersection, look at the grades, look at the sight lines and whatnot, and then comment on whether this could be left as safe. So that additional work is not in our budget or in our timeline currently. It's possible to look at that. That's always an option. We recommend, as we've mentioned in the report, not to halt the project because we have a timeline we got to work to satisfy the grant that pays for the project, the whole project. That this, because we're talking about 2 spaces, if council wanted to go down that road, we'd recommend that be looked at sort of in parallel with just going out to bid, getting a contractor lined up, and if that change is something that they can sign off and we can get MOTI to prove it, that would be a change order to the construction contract to add those 2 spaces back in. Which is, at this point, we haven't got to the point of seeking prices from a traffic engineer to see what that additional scope is. We'd have to do that but as I said, that's not currently within the scope of the budget of the project.
Thank you for the clarification. I'm just going to state how I'm feeling, which is that none of us here are experts, but I do understand the safety potential. I feel as though, obviously, I go to a lot of accidents and I see a lot of injured people. I feel as though the 30 feet between the 2 spots there that are still against what would be current standard safety practices for creating intersections, and where the parking does begin on the angle, in the big picture of things, I err on the side of safety, and I think those standards are in place for a reason. and it's beyond my pay grade, but I trust that the people who put these standards in place have done so based on statistics and what has worked and where failures have happened in sort of the safety scheme of things. And that's where I'm at. And it doesn't have to do with timeline of making something happen tomorrow or next year or when the grant is due. I'm thinking of a safety component.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hoare.
I heartily agree about safety, having been hit by a car, and still being titanium from knee to ankle. Yeah. I also, when I look at, interestingly, the diagram for option 3 in our agenda package, I'm looking at the turning radius that is actually on this, and you can see the vehicle, because of the bump out on that corner, turning into the oncoming lane to make the corner onto Fraser Lane. If a large vehicle like the Cisco truck that delivers to the pizza place, for instance, trying to make that turn onto Fraser Lane, they would have to go into oncoming traffic, which not difficult in November or December, but very much impossible in the summer. So I'm just going to say that. And spanner in the works, because this thought just occurred to me while we've been discussing the option of the 2 spaces in front of, the crow's nest that exists in option 3. So the issue is them backing out into traffic, Rochelle's grandmother hitting people, which I love. Could there be 2 parallel spots there instead of, I'm just looking at the spacing, I don't know. But if they were lined up, I'm not tall enough, I'm not showing it. You'd still have to back. I don't know. It was just something that occurred to me that they would not be perpendicular, like backing perpendicularly into a intersection. Anyway, spanner, meet the works.
Through the chair, maybe I can just offer. So some of the, and again, I'm going to say this over and over. I'm not a traffic engineer. We rely on the professionals to tell us what's safe. Where I'm hovering my cursor here, for example, you got this space number 7, the new angled parking. The distance, that is, because in one of the sketches we had earlier, there was another spot, that was next to that as well. But there has to be adequate space so that a vehicle can back up without backing into the crosswalk before moving forward. Those sort of dimensions are within sort of the engineered standards, and so this curb line it has, and whether parking could be, certainly you could remove that hatched area, which is right now that sort of historic driveway access, and put more parallel parking. But we've tried to keep that free. Beyond that, again, it has to do with this distance of, if someone is backing out of a parking space, whether it's parallel or angled, are they going to be into that intersection, either for visibility or for a pedestrian who's going through that? We could certainly ask them, again, to look at it. But I think this curb line and the radius and the alignment of those crosswalks have been done to meet what are the standards of a normal intersection. Given that this is it's not an engineering term, but it's some funky angles of how the road, how Main Street meets Fraser. This isn't a 90-degree intersection. You've got a slope on one side. They have to work with those. And so you can see, like, this curb line is sort of double line here. That has everything to do with, as you're saying, that vehicle, that's essentially, there would be bollards. And so this is a flat surface, so that smaller vehicles would follow the tighter radius, but there's a larger radius there. And there's an example of this in Tofino where it's sort of flush paving, but pedestrians have a safe space and a shorter crossing. But in that rare time when you have a large vehicle like a semi-trailer that comes in to make that turn, they've got a wider radius that they can use. So that gets into the design details of that paving surface, but it makes it both attractive, because this is about accessibility and safety, dignity for people on foot as they're walking through our community, and having that accessibility, but also allowing the movement of vehicles when they need to.
Mayor Noel, any further comments?
No, just waiting for yours.
So for me, it looks like option 2 is the best option, and I'm especially concerned because option 3, it says it could definitely not be approved by the Ministry of Transportation. So that would be a detriment right there. We couldn't do it. It could be an option to look at down the road, as Mr. Gregg suggested, that we could go with option 2 for now, and then look later down the road if there's anything further that can be done in front of the Crow's Nest, like a parallel parking spot, perhaps. We talked about angling those at the last meeting, and it still means that they're backing into traffic, into the...
Yeah, but I think what's being missed is the actual distance between where you'd be backing into the crosswalk and intersection area. As it is now is not, it's unsafe. So angled parking does solve some things, but like was already mentioned, you can't get that close to a crosswalk backing up. Whether you're on an angle or whether you're backing straight into it or parallel parking, you would still be coming too close to that intersection.
It looks like the bump out where the crosswalk is that right where Mr. Gregg said he was taking one parking place out. If you angle those, it's about the same distance. About accessibility, people who need to get in, older people.
Well, they're looking for some direction here. I've heard all your good points. Obviously, Mr. Gregg, you made a comment that if you were to put the RFP out, that there would be a clause in there to perhaps have your traffic engineers take a look at your option 3, 1, and 2, whether that's doable or not, just so we're not holding up the process.
If through the chair, if council wishes to go in that direction, I'll back up one step. Where the project is at is we have a 95% detailed design. That's what's shown in the middle of the screen there. That is essentially, it's very close to, we just received the drawings, we're going through the cost estimates, we're going to have to make some decisions, I think, to keep it on budget, because we now have a Class A cost estimate, and we're very much designing to that budget. But as part of the process of this, the next step would be to sort of finalize that to 100% design and put it out to bid. Within that and our current timeline, there isn't time to do another traffic study and to tuck that in. We'd suggest that if council wants to go there, we would look at engaging the engineer to do that work. It'd be outside the scope of what we currently have budgeted. So we would have to come back to council and say, okay, here's what it's going to cost, here's the time it's going to take, and have some thoughts on where the funds would come from, because it is not currently in our budget. And if council gave that a green light, we could do that work. If that results in something that MOTI can sign off on to say, yes, with a traffic engineer, we can keep some additional parking right in front of the Crow's Nest, then that we would suggest catch up, if you will, as a change order to the contract, so that we're not stopping the whole project moving forward. Because we need to get it out to bid very shortly to have a contractor lined up so that they can be prepared to mobilize in the fall to start this work.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Mr. Gregg. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say. You just said it more eloquently. So, Mr. Lawrence, do we need a motion here?
If council would like to proceed with the option 2, that 95%, and just move the project forward as presented, then there's no motion required. If council wants, as Mr. Gregg has indicated, to look at that second option as to additional parking in front of the Crow's Nest and engage a traffic engineer, then a resolution would be required for that.
But that can be done at a later date as a change to the order?
So we have a, in case here, let me just bring this up. So a resolution that council could consider would be that they direct staff to report back on the cost and timing to engage a traffic engineer to analyze the Main Street and Cedar Road intersection and provide recommendations on whether any of the existing nose-in parking, that's the straight angled straight parking, can be safely kept in front of the Crow's Nest building in a configuration such as option 3 presented in the staff report on the Village Green on April 12, 2022. Continue council directs staff to continue with the design, development, and tendering of the project as shown in option 2, noting that if any additional or alternative design for the intersection is approved at a later date, that it may need to be accommodated as a change order to the project. And 3, that council directs staff to explore the cost for adding parking stalls within the current extents of the Cedar Road parking hub for consideration in 2023 budget. So the key things here is that we would need to find additional funds within the existing budget or future budget to facilitate the additional design work. The traffic engineer would be hired. They would review it, do whatever is necessary to confirm the information needed to present to the Ministry of Transportation. They would need to give a stamp of approval for anything that the engineers could recommend. And then that would be brought back to council with the costs associated with it, and we'd need to add into the budget additional funds for a change order with the work as presented in option 2. So there's a couple of different steps in there, and I should note that I mentioned the third option there with respect to the Cedar Road parking hub is another option for council to consider. They can provide staff with direction on that if they want us to pursue it, and we can look at that for a 2023 project and budget within that 2023 project. Excuse me, 2023 budget process. Get my tongue in here.
Thank you. How does council feel about those?
I feel like it's odd that we're sitting here talking about finding more taxpayer money to spend on finding a less than best practice way to do an intersection when we have the opportunity to fix it the right way, but then we want to hire somebody to find a way to make it, maybe less ideal, but how it works for these few spaces. I don't think it's a prudent management of taxpayer money or the safety of the public. Sorry.
Councillor Hoare?
I agree on the taxpayer money thing. I also agree on the safety part. This is a bad intersection with crazy angles. This was not in my geometry class for angles, just gotta say. That is not perpendicular to anything. And it's really hard because these spots have been there and they are unsafe, as witnessed Councillor Cole's grandmother. Yeah. I have trouble with that first resolution because it's spending more money on a traffic engineer. Yeah, I just have trouble with it.
Councillor Cole?
Sorry, I just want to say that when we make changes, it's not going to be perfect all the time, and there's no way to suit every need and want and desire. And in a perfect world, that'd be great if we could have everything, but we're dealing with the angles and history and, you know, personal passion and commitment to the way things have been. But this isn't, the whole point of this is to improve the downtown core, and there will always be varying opinions of what an improvement would be, and does it take a visionary or a crystal ball? Maybe, but when it comes down to things that are cut and dry as safety and the reason that the standards are in place, is honestly, there are statistics somewhere where somebody has died in intersections with odd angles and blind spots and backing into traffic. That's why there's the standards that there is. So if we have the opportunity to do it right, it's going to be painful on many fronts, but I can't imagine that we would pay more money to figure out how to do something less right. And I said that part already, but I did just want to recognize that I get that it's difficult and it's not going to be perfect, but it's got to be better. You know, 9 out of 10 points, it's got to be better. And taking safety out of it takes away a bunch of those points for me on every level.
Okay, so if we are looking at option 2, we don't need a resolution. That's Mayor Noel. Anything further from you?
I want to echo what Councillor Cole here. I think you nailed it with every point that you've made, which kind of pushed me into your direction a little bit. So thank you for being very clear and bold on your comments.
So I've got one additional comment.
Okay, Councillor Hoare.
Just regarding do we want to consider the motion about the spots in the Cedar Hub parking for next year?
Mr. Lawrence, do we need a separate motion for the 8 spots in the Cedar Hub?
With respect to the Cedar Hub parking, if council can definitely do a resolution to move that forward, and it will be included for consideration in the 2023 budget. It would solidify that. We can also, you can just direct staff to include that in the 2023 budget without a resolution. It's entirely up to council. So either way would work just fine.
I think a resolution would be in order.
No.
Excuse me, Chair. Sorry, I didn't answer part of your question, whether or not we could do it this year. There's always a possibility, although we did not allocate the budget or resources for that. So it would be a matter of whether or not we could find the funding for it, and also work it into the project timeline to be able to actually complete it. As council knows, we have a number of large projects on the go. So adding another one, it'd be a little dicey of whether or not we could actually pull it off this year. Although it's a fairly simple project, we would need to bump other things to include that in this year's project scope. It could be done easily in 2023, though.
I think the wording is fine the way it is on the screen. If someone would like to make that motion.
I will move that we explore costs for adding parking stalls within the current extents of the Cedar Road parking hub for consideration in the 2023 budget.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? And carried. Thank you for your guidance, Mr. Lawrence, on that. Okay, where are we at? 14.3 ACRD press release for West Coast evacuation route plan. Any comments, Councillor Cole? Sounds like a great idea.
Sorry, I concur, yes.
And around the region newsletter, anything you'd like to bring out from that?
No, I have a couple points in my report that I'll share.
Okay, perfect. Mayor's announcements. Mayor Noel, anything to announce?
I just had one. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Celebration for Life for Elling Reed was going to be occurring on April the 30th. I think for a lot of people, I don't want to get too emotional about it, but the reality is this is a person who built Island West Resort and Whispering Pines Trailer Court and many other things. Almost reached the age of 100. And for me, being a young man in this community, Elling, I think really, for me, spoke of entrepreneurism, community beliefs, and I'm just really encouraging the community to pay their respects on April the 30th at 2 p.m. at the community center.
Thank you for that. Council committee reports. I'll go last since I'm chairing. Councillor Kemps is not with us. Councillor Hoare.
Wow, all of a sudden to the top of the list. I'm not used to that. We all attended the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities from April 1st to 3rd down in Victoria, and also the Local Government Leadership Academy, April 6th to 8th in Richmond. A lot of really good workshops and speakers. I always have a few takeaways. One was a reminder from Dr. Henry, who was a keynote speaker. Reminder to bring positivity and respect for others to all things. And I feel like it could be a t-shirt. Maybe it's my new t-shirt at work. Kindness is your superpower. So I'm working with that. And the other one that I'm like random quote girl today. The other one was to treasure curiosity over certainty. And I think it was during one of the sessions on First Nations that Chair John Jack was running, where somebody made a comment to remember to be a great ancestor.
Good quotes tonight. Thank you. Councillor Cole?
I'm a fan of Chair Jack. My takeaways from AVICC and LGLA were also the Bonnie Henry moments were lovely. I will say that the one thing, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I'll take the face-to-face this year as opposed to the last 2 virtual years. My one thing would be having the AVICC and all of the island people also at the LGLA where people were fresh and hadn't just heard maybe some of the same speakers or some of the same topics the week prior. It would have been nice if they were spread out how originally planned. But, of course, we all know that there's a virus out there that made dates change and such. But amazing to be back out and seeing people. And Mr. Horgan came down with COVID the day after he was our opening speaker at the AVICC. So that was a moment. I saw that on the news. And then that was all the beginning of the month. Somewhere in between those two on the 4th, I had the good fortune to take part in the second Communities Building Youth Futures conversation through the Upper Clayoquot Health Network, which I will bring more information forward as that evolves. The West Coast Committee, the ACRD, and the Hospital District meeting all took place on the 13th. From the West Coast Committee, I will talk about the transit. Our transit was reported out on, and the projects moving forward are all enhancements to existing projects and not the situation we're in where it is a new project. There's a delay in things like new, the things with people in them that drive around, buses. And chips for, we know there's a shortage of vehicles in the world. Well, there's also a shortage of chips for buses right now. Anyways, all said and done, they meet again in the spring in hopes that it will then be back on the priority list to be completed by the fall of next year. To which I said, I guess next spring we could be exactly in the same place again where we didn't make the list, but apparently we're high up, but just they aren't doing any new things right now, just re-and-re's of existing services. So sorry about that. And then I had a little bit of a moment of pride when our letter about our plastic utensils was at the ACRD, and it kind of just made me smile because it was a proud little moment. And can't read my own writing. Oh, that's about Bo and Luke Duke and the General Lee, so that was another topic earlier on today. And tomorrow is the 2022 West Coast Job Expo here at the Community Center. So there's going to be lots of employers. I think we were 33. I think now we're down to 32 employers will be in the big room there tomorrow from noon until 4, 1 till 4. So everybody who's already taxed out and has too many jobs, don't come. But those who are looking for employment, please come out and check out what's out there, including BC Ambulance Service will be there with the hiring booth. Make sure you say nice things about me to my boss, who will be behind the table manning the fort. Her name's Carew. She's lovely. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Noel.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that update, Councillor Cole. I think obviously I went to those 2 conventions with all of you. It was nice to see a lot of our peers and frightening to hear that some of the same conversations we were having over 2 years ago, that for a lot of them, the situations got a lot worse. And what it really did showed to me was our community is very fortunate with things like RMI funding, with community forest funding, with a sound business community, with a strong residential base, construction sector. A lot of things are happening in our favor, which usually don't happen for the West Coast. So I really think that we all really saw that. There's a lot of moments of that throughout those conventions. So it was nice to tag along, and that was the first time I had attended the LGLA. So one of the things that have been continued to be concerning, obviously, is our local ambulance station. I know that there's a lot of other communities on the West Coast here that have concerns like ours, where they've changed the model from a part-time. I'm going to get half the acronyms wrong, Councillor Cole, but I know you're with me. The fact is we're having a problem where our car is now unattended at times because there are no ambulance attendants, and that's quite concerning. I'm 50, there's a lot of people aged, there's tourists in town, there's children in town, and the thought that our ambulance is sitting there parked because we don't have attendants for whatever business model that is happening, it's concerning for me. It's very concerning for our neighbor. President McCarthy has more recently had a couple calls where ambulances are coming at a very long distance up to Tofino now. That's not the fault of any of the people that work in this local station. That's the higher up. So I imagine the person that's at your job fair tomorrow is not the decision maker on that one, Councillor Cole, but definitely I do intend to escalate this conversation a little bit. I think we're all supportive of the fact that we are just starting to get into our busy season, and the thought that we're struggling to keep attendance in cars and protect our residents of the West Coast. I think that's probably the biggest concern I have on my mind tonight. I was going to make a motion to write a letter to a couple, but knowing that we're going to be meeting again next week, I think I'll work with Mr. Lawrence and have a proper motion and a proper letter to submit to the group at that time, once I hopefully make a few calls this week and understanding if there's any kind of immediate solutions that we can assist with. I know accommodation is a big one, but Rochelle, Councillor Cole, are you eager to say anything, or are you going to stay out of that conversation?
I think I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you, though.
Okay. And I really just want to say thank you. We're very fortunate in the community to have someone like you that's working pretty much, triple shift in order to keep that car manned as best as you can. And I think we have an obligation to you and your crew, as far limited as it is to ensure that we get you guys some support. And if we have to shake a few trees in order to do that, I think I'm willing to die on that hill. Thank you. That's all I have to report, I think.
Thank you, Mayor Noel. For myself, March 29th, I attended the Tourism Ucluelet AGM at Blackrock, which was quite well attended. It was the second time I'd been in a room with quite a number of people, the first time being Art Splash. And it's been a long 2 years, that's for sure. It was great. And then April 1st to 3rd, AVICC in Victoria. My biggest takeaway on that one was before the conference actually even started, there was a morning tour called the Zero Waste Tour. And it was a bus tour in Victoria. And it took us to the Food Rescue Distribution Center, which was really intriguing, how stores, grocery stores, will donate any sort of less than perfect food. And there's a huge crew of volunteers that help to distribute that food to people that need it after it's been assessed, if it's still edible. The tour also took us to a building downtown that is being demolished, but it's actually being, here's their motto. They're called the Unbuilders. It says, building a new home, unbuild the old one. So these people, this company goes and unbuilds buildings, and all those pieces of that building go to various places, hopefully not too much to the landfill. They give a lot of stuff to Habitat for Humanity in order to build housing for people that need it. And yeah, that was kind of my highlight of that conference. And then the LGLA, Local Government Leadership Academy in Richmond, seeing and hearing Dr. Bonnie speak in person was really the highlight for me. April 9th, I had a Vancouver Island Regional Library meeting via Zoom. Normally that is an in-person meeting, and it always follows AVICC, so you can just go from one conference to that meeting. But it was by Zoom, and that was fine because I'd been away from home for 9 days already. And I've got another one. I have another one tomorrow on the 20th, tomorrow morning. And then I just got notification this afternoon from the Vancouver Island Regional Library staff that the BCGEU Local 702 members voted in favor of ratifying the tentative BCGEU/VIRL agreement. So that's been a long-awaited good choice and happy news for an afternoon. And that's it for me.
I'm just going to tag a comment onto your report from your zero waste one about the food distribution center. Just for the record, very little goes into the landfill from the co-op. I've had 3 questions from Europeans this week. I've only been working for 3 days. So our produce, for example, goes to the food bank. If it does not go to the food bank, it goes to goats, pigs, chickens, peeps with animals. So I just want to let everybody know that because I think it's important.
That's good information. Thank you. All right, we're into question period. This is, again, an opportunity for the public to ask questions and to provide comments on items that have been addressed on today's agenda. Items not related to today's agenda will not be heard. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, we have a lineup. Jan.
Do you want me to give my name and address again?
Yes, please.
Is it on? Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Oh, you can. Okay. It's not as loud as before. Jan Dresky, 205 Main Street, 239 Main Street, the Crow's Nest. In our presentation about the Tourism Ucluelet, it was one of the comments that was brought up, and one of the goals was to have vibrant businesses and employees that are healthy and secure. Businesses like mine that employ people year-round. I employ all my employees year-round, even though it costs me more in the winter than it should, but I don't care because they're my employees and I keep them year-round. With the reduction of the parking in front of the Crow's Nest, it will affect my business. And I'm going to stand by my map again. Now that it's official, 36 parking places are being removed from the downtown. Anybody who wants to come and tell me I've got this wrong, please do. I wish it wasn't true. I want to go on record as saying that this is a significant loss of parking for the businesses downtown. It's going to have impact on many businesses as well as mine, and disappointing. The positive note is thank you for allowing me to keep my driveway, because it gives me some options.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm still Patricia Sieber from 1058 Helen Road. I was going to say before Jennifer said it, that we already do that in it, because the food bank, every week I get to sort the produce that Jennifer sends over to us, and we have been thankful for years for this, so thank you very much. My comments, I know that because it was the motion that you were discussing, it was concerning the parking around the intersection by the Crow's Nest. That's where your focus was. But it does disappoint me that I have been listening since November, and I haven't heard you address the other parking. Because, and when the number 12 and 9 was tossed about, you seem to be only concentrating around the Crow's Nest. All the other parking across from the aquarium will disappear, and those alone are about 9 or 8. And my comments before, until you have a comprehensive parking plan for the whole of Ucluelet, these kind of piecemeal taking away here, adding a few there, is just going to continue to cause tension and discord and confusion. So that's all I have to say. I thought you don't have any time left to consider the other parking places. I understand Mr. Gregg has said the deadline is looming. It just disappoints me that you have not discussed this before. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the audience? Are there any questions by Zoom? No. Have we received any questions via emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Give me one moment, please. I'll just double check. We have no new emails via community input.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mason. I believe our meeting is now adjourned at 7:13. Thank you for coming.